had one laying around, and I said, "Oh, I'll just park it up there."
You ready to rock and roll over there, Pete?
Yes.
Good.
Inching closer.
No, I'm good, except some reason. Come on. Yeah, it's on. It is on. Do I not have? Oh, I know. I have to wait and be promoted.
Oh, sorry.
You ready for me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, I will kick things off. All right, good evening and welcome to Medfield's Select Board meeting for Tuesday, May 28th. As we know, this is a meeting will be held in hybrid format. The Select Board is here in person and members of the public may attend in person, and I see a few. In addition, members of the public who wish to participate via Zoom may do so by going to the town website, selecting the calendar, selecting the Select Board meeting for this evening. You'll see the agenda has a Zoom link there, as well as if you're not able to access a computer, you can use the conference dial-in number. And then, as always, and I think this is really important, the info packet is available, so all residents are certainly welcome to view the documents that we viewed in preparation for tonight's meeting. Also just want to wish, hopefully everyone had a nice Memorial Day, and we will kick things off this evening. So I do want to take a moment of appreciation for our troops serving around the globe in defense of our country. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we'll kick tonight off with appointments. Maurice Goulet, Director of Public Works, requests the following. We'll start off with A, vote to sign the contract with Parks Corporation for a new AquaGuard self-cleaning perforated panel screen for the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $241,500.
So what we call is an influence screen. It's the first line of defense of the wastewater treatment plant. It's one of the most important features of our wastewater treatment plant, and it's the one we have now is very antiquated. It's on repairs and maintenance just about all the time. So it's really a needed replacement. We were able to, the select board was able to secure some ARPA funding for us for that screen, so we're thankful for that. The inflow screen will be about $241,500 for the equipment itself, and then we'll have to come back for installation afterwards.
Okay.
Won't be the same company. So.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Pete, any questions?
Won't be the same company.
What's that?
To install, we have an electrical, a roofing contractor. We have different contractors that need to come in to install the screen. So Parkson is just responsible for the equipment to furnish the equipment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Expensive stuff.
It is.
Fancy. Well, it's an impressive plant. Actually.
It's a.
No more questions.
And I get these ahead of time, so all my questions were answered about a week ago, so I don't have.
Good.
Can you say that louder?
Well, I do on the next one, but they're informational. So I don't want to raise expectations too high.
And I don't really have a question as much as by the fact that you said that they're just providing the actual
Correct.
screen. That explains why at the end the buyer owner is responsible for all that other stuff. So all of that needs to be there. So when you have the company come and install, everything is good to go.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, I'm good. Any questions from the audience? Okay. A motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the contract with Parks Corporation for a new AquaGuard self-cleaning perforated panel screen for the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $241,500.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
All right, good to go. All right, second one is to vote to sign the contract with Genevan Group LLC for the annual National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Stormwater Compliance Assistance in the amount of $39,800.
So this is a stormwater, our MS4 permit that we have. We have to be in compliance every year. Genevan has been doing it for us. This is an annual kind of a contract that we use them to keep us in compliance. We have a lot of new regulations that we have to follow. With phosphorus, we have to take phosphorus out of the system. We have our regular maintenance that we do, catch basin cleaning, getting rid of our debris and everything. But they have best management practices that we need to insert into our into our system to get rid of the phosphorus and to get rid of certain contaminants and do dry and wet weather sampling and all the rest to be in compliance. So they're getting more and more strict every year, and these guys have been doing a great job for us. So I ask that you have to sign the contract for us.
All right. Pete, any questions?
Yes, the phosphorus, is that mainly from fertilizer, lawn
Yeah,
fertilizer?
a lot of it is from fertilizer that gets into our system.
Okay. And it looked to me like there were 7 tasks still to do. I didn't understand those very well. Could you maybe explain all of what they're doing for us?
Sure. So stormwater report, every year we have to do an annual report for the state. So that takes in all the testing and all the tasks that we do has to be put into a report format and sent to the state for approval.
Okay, so these guys are preparing the report.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. My thing went out over here. Quarterly meetings with Neponset Stormwater Partnership. We are part of their group that they go to this stormwater partnership, and we collaborate to have a regional stormwater, whether it's outreach and different things that we do through this collaborative. So they're part of that as well. So that's what.
Yeah. What is that?
So Neponset, we are in the Neponset watershed, as well as the Charles River watershed.
Yeah.
So Neponset has a big collaborative, a lot of different cities and towns, including Westwood and all the neighboring towns, that we get together monthly, quarterly to discuss the stormwater needs to comply with our permit, a part of the permit, not the whole permit. So the
Am I understanding it right that what we're doing is we're paying this group to go to those meetings for us?
No, we also attend these meetings, but they have to get their information so he can put it together in our report that makes sense. But also Neponset helps regionally. We can only use so much from Neponset. We can't use everything that they do because we're town specific.
Okay.
So these guys take what they give us and add that to our reports as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So we kind of all work together. So it does save us money by being part of the Neponset Stormwater Partnership, but we also have our own compliance issues that we have to take care of.
Yep. So yesterday, after the Memorial Day Parade, Gus and I had a tour of the booking area and the public safety building, and I walked away thinking, my God, all this technology that the police have to deal with. I had no idea that there was so much technology in the booking room.
Yeah.
And obviously you're dealing with a huge amount of technology and reporting requirements as well. So
Right.
it's complicated running a town.
It's getting more and more stringent.
Yeah.
So
So
Luckily,
anything,
we hire the smartest people, so we're good.
yeah, they'll be coming soon.
anything else about this, or is
Just
that pretty much it?
there's just like sanitary sewer overflow. There's just a lot of different reporting from
Yeah,
different
okay.
parts of our stormwater. The I&I is involved with it. We have so many different areas that we have to report on. So many things that street sweeping is part of it. Catch basin cleaning, removing the
Leaves.
everything, the debris from the town.
Um,
If you think anything that goes into the basins finally make it into our waterways. So we have to make sure that what's going into our basins are controlled, and then when we go to the outfalls, we control what's there too. So any kind of illicit discharges that comes through the system, we have to sample for and then test for, and then take care of it if there's any issues.
I don't remember, somewhere along the line I saw the design of a catch basin, and it's basically designed to catch things that we don't want to end up in the,
Yeah, we have a deep sump that it collects into, and that has to be, all that debris has to be removed from the system.
and so those are the
Every
trucks
year.
that we see going around towns with those.
The big grapple is, we have
Yeah.
2,100 basins that we have to get rid of, and I'm sure Dan can add to that, right, Dan? They can appreciate it, so.
Okay.
Yep.
And there, I saw some reference to 7 tasks still to do. I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
It's probably for our BMPs that we need to, there's, all around town, we created, like, even at the
Best management
DPW, best management practices. So there's a place on South Street, there's some at the schools, different areas of town, we have to create these to catch stormwater, to filter it through so these contaminants don't go through our system.
And that's part of what this contract is going to do.
This is
for
part
us.
of the development of the BMPs, yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
So for a minute there, I thought Pete was just firing a shot across.
I know, I thought-
when we went into the jail cells. It's like this. I know this regulatory stuff is serious.
It's just
but I was-
the amount of technology that was in the booking area. I was quite impressed.
I thought you
How-
were sending Mo with subtle warning that if he doesn't comply with phosphate regulations, he could find himself experiencing the.
We have a
fine
cell where you
technology
can lock up like
in
an
the
8.
holding tank at the public safety building.
I didn't realize that we had this cell where you could actually handcuff like 8 people on a bench. They apparently never do that, but I guess that's for those big.
They haven't arrested an
Disruptions.
entire DPW crew
No,
yet.
not yet.
So my questions are for education, just so you can relax on that.
Sure.
This is for the 6th and 7th year. I was just curious. So, was there a 5-year contract and now this is 2 years, or was it 3 year with a 2 year extent? I just noted they did it for 5 years, and then we were doing another contract for 2, and I just was curious administratively how it was clearly a renewal or an extent. It's not an extension. It's a
No,
renewal.
but because we can choose our consultant for this particular project, they've been really good for over the years, keeping us into compliance. We're kind of ahead of a lot of cities and towns because of them, which I appreciate. So, but what kind of is your question as far as?
No, as I was reading it, and it was just curious. This is not a 2-year contract.
No.
But it's a contract for the 6th and 7th years, as I read it.
Yes.
So it's going to take less than 2 years to do it because they're doing FY25 and FY26. But that led me to say, well, then they claimed that they had helped us for 5 years
Yes.
prior.
Yep.
So I was thinking, okay, so this must be a contract renewal. But then my head went and said, I wonder.
It's
why we
a
do
yearly.
that.
It's
Oh,
a yearly renewal.
Okay.
Yes.
That explains.
Yep.
And I would, just because your point about the phosphate removal. Phosphate is something I can understand a lot better than PFAS in terms of just getting it. But the table, if I saw it correctly, we are almost at twice the level that we were sort of required to be, if I read that right, I read that 738 pounds of phosphates was, I think, what has to be removed.
Right.
And we were on, it sounds like we were on, the requirement was 100, I saw it somewhere else, 100, the requirement was like 100.
197.2.
197 was
Right.
where we needed to be at.
Right.
And we were already at 239, and actually, I think as of
We're
this
about,
year-
like I said, we're ahead of the game,
Right.
and
Right.
you know, it's the more we can take out early enough, the better off we're going to be. So
So the next thing is, because you often come for equipment, that we need for the water treatment plants, as I was reading this, best management practice to me sounded more like it was actually the operating processes that we, when I saw about things like cleaning out catch basins, removing leaves, this is actually not technology in that sense. It's got more to do
With nature
the
and everything.
procedures, the way that
Right.
we actually maintain our systems.
right,
So
and,
they're pushing for composting of leaves.
Yeah, but what I was getting at is but we're not buying equipment, buying technology. We're actually changing our work processes.
right, and trying to deal with behaviors of the residents as well. I mean, with the water conservation efforts, with the trying to reduce phosphorus in our system, all that is done by different techniques, different things that the residents do. They don't realize that things do go into our water systems indirectly, and that's so we have to make sure that we can take care of that or change the behaviors of the residents. So.
And another question to go on with that is, in the best management the initiative areas, if I understood it right, it seemed like the first ones we prioritized almost seemed like they were the well fields. It was Wheelock. It was, I don't know that it was strictly well fields, but I think it said there was 40 potential sites.
Correct.
So the next thing I said is, okay, these best management practices are not only operating processes, they're actually site-tailored operating processes. And it kind of sounded like we were probably doing well field areas first.
It's more that we had a grant to look into potential sites in the town that we could reduce contaminants in our system.
Okay.
40 were identified. We could only act upon 3 with the grant money.
Okay.
So we have 40 potential sites, but it's from the worst to the
That's kind of
not
what I
so
figured.
bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't make one administrative observation on page 4 of 7 at the very bottom. It says, under Task 1, Annual Stormwater Report, Genovan will build upon past reports and will assist the town preparing the FY 2021 Annual Stormwater Report.
Yeah, that's a misprint, I'm sure.
Okay, so it's not like a town annual report that sometimes can take that long. Okay, good.
Speaking of that,
So,
All right, so you're good?
yeah, I'm done.
All right. I'm
I had
good.
one more question.
Sure.
Are you all set?
Yeah,
Should we be doing more of a town-wide plan or educational program to try to educate residents and the landscapers about the phosphorus?
Through the Ponce Stormwater Partnership, we have public outreach in this as well. So we work with them. We work with Charles River. We're working on actually some flyers as well to put onto our website to explain different parts of stormwater and I&I and everything else. So we just haven't got to that point yet, but we do send out through the Ponce Stormwater Partnership. We send something out every year.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, good. Good for your
And
good
even
for
in the
your,
schools.
Good for your environment. Save your town money.
There you go.
Stop fertilizing your.
And don't force
On.
people to do stuff, just teach them what they ought to know.
Well, yes, exactly, and let them decide which is best for them.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, I'm
Ready?
good.
Yeah, I move that we sign the contract with Genovan Group LLC for annual NPDES stormwater compliance assistance in the amount of $39,800 with a period of performance from May 28th, 2024 to May 31st, 2025.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right, and moving on to discussion of next steps in the Route 27 West Street intersection design.
So back in 2020, we consulted with, contracted with Beta Group, who's our kind of a transportation engineers, and we looked into the Route 27 West Street intersection. As you know, it's one of the top 200 crash locations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we're trying to reconstruct that intersection to make it for public safety. With that task, Beta had come up with a couple scenarios, but also in the meantime, the Metropolitan Planning Organization and the MAPC got together, and out of 30 projects around the state and in their territory, they felt ours was worth a case study. So they did a kind of a case study of reconstructing that intersection in two ways. One alternative was to put in dedicated turning lanes, which we thought was a good alternative with traffic lights. And Frank, if you could put those, I got just a slide. So they came up with a draft, and here's one of the scenarios. We're gonna blow that up for you.
Is that too much, Mo?
No, you can go further, and then just you can center it afterwards. Should be able to go further. Okay, so there it shows all the different approaches. It shows dedicated left-hand turn lanes, where the issue right now is when you have these turning lanes, each queue up on either side. We don't have any red arrows, any green arrows. So what happens is people will go on a green light, but they can't see around the other cars. So when people go around, it becomes a very big safety issue, and that's why we're getting a lot of these T-bone crashes all over the place. With the dedicated turning lanes and the traffic lights, you would put a red arrow for them to stay in the queue until all the traffic goes by. You would not put in the yellow flashing lights in some intersections where it's safer to do so. Then they would go on a green arrow.
Smart.
So that was one of the scenarios that they had brought up. However, if you go to the next scenario, this is a kind of a roundabout that shows it's a single lane roundabout that they had put as another alternative. We recently got an earmark for $1.3 million from Congressman Auchinclaws's office. A roundabout would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.8 million, and a dedicated turning with the traffic lights would be about $1.4 million. Okay? The issue is that if we were to use the federal funds, earmarked for the town, we have to go through the Mass DOT process. When you go through the Mass DOT process, they are requiring roundabouts, if it is all possible. Now, they're very adamant, and I have an email from our consultant that talks about how adamant the state is of putting roundabouts. You'll see them in a lot of different communities. If we use the money, it's almost required to put in a roundabout to utilize that money unless you can prove that it's not going to work in that area. Now, what I get from our consultants is that, we have land takings that are going to be needed. It's hard to see on this, but the top of the screen, I don't know if you can go any
Yeah. I
Any
can see
more.
that here on my laptop.
So there's a yellow, a blue dotted line.
Yep.
That shows that it's in the travel lane of the roundabout. So anything beyond that. Now, we would not be putting these shared use paths, which is the orange color, the orange-yellow color. We just wouldn't have the funds to do that at this point. And plus, those will not go anywhere right now because we don't have a connection to those.
Right.
But the heavy green area, those are raised medians, so that keeps people inside, almost like curbing. So we would have to go to that extent, which is still land takings for that corner and a couple other areas around this. The state does not wander off of the roundabout just because we have land takings, but it does add to the cost. We just don't know what it would cost. Plus, you would probably have to come up with slope easements and temporary construction easements for this particular system. So our consultants are saying, and we've met with Mass DOT, and they're pretty, like I said, I met with them as well, and they were pretty adamant about if we're going to use federal funding or any state funding, that roundabout is necessary unless it's absolutely cannot be put in. So that's a dilemma, because you want the intersection done and you want to use up their money, but that's the kind of the alternative that we would need to face, or put in. If we put something else in, it would be most likely on our dime.
Really?
Yeah.
So I have a couple questions, but I'll start with you, Pete.
So if we want to put in traffic lights,
Mhm.
we'll have to pay that on our own dime?
If we use the federal earmark money, that's kind of the trade-off.
I'm sorry, we can use the federal...
I'm sorry. We can't put the traffic lights in if they're adamant about putting a roundabout if we use the federal funds. If we don't use the federal funds, we can put in the traffic lights in the dedicated turn lanes.
And the cost of that is...
That cost would be $1.4 million plus $300,000 for design.
All right, so 1.7, and then...
The difference would be 1.7 to the town, 1.7 million to the town if we did our own ideas. If we put in the roundabout, it would be approximately $800,000 on our that we still would have to come up with $800,000 versus 1.7 million.
So we save a lot of money if we do the roundabout.
1.1 million.
So the 800,000 doesn't include the takings.
That does not include the takings, so we don't know what the assessed values of those are.
Yeah. I wouldn't think those would be that much myself.
Well, there's one
Town
taking.
council is shaking his head at that comment of mine, so...
I don't think I think there's only two permanent takings that would have to be performed here.
And it looks
The
like
rest
the-
would just be temporary easements that you
It
would
looks
still
like
have
the
to pay for.
67 West Street, I think, is the office building on the corner.
Mhm.
It looks like they'll still be able to get around their parking lot, so that's...
Yeah, if you look at
That'll be
the
good.
green line is where the extent of this would be, not the yellow. And I think with the design from Beta, this was done by the MPO, so I think the roundabout might even be able to sneak one way on the other side a little bit more as well to take it away. But you still have to have some takings and easements.
Because there's plenty of room in front of Banfield.
Mhm.
If you could squeak the roundabout that way.
It's really the alignment of
Yeah,
the
with the-
approaches that
yeah.
hurt you, that constrict you to where it needs to go.
So instead of doing a roundabout, can we do like an oblong or an oval about?
I'm not sure if they're, what the allowance is, but
So, personally, I like roundabouts better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, and when it saves me money, I like it even better. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I'm starting from.
I just wanted to bring it to your attention to see your thoughts and just so.
So
you know,
my preference would be that we get rid of the stoplights along 109 and have roundabouts at South, North, and 27.
that's, I don't know if we have the room for those, but
That would be a real
that's
estate
going to be in
challenge.
we're trying to work on a 109 reconstruction project as well.
There-
So
there's a town in England where they did that, where they had very heavy traffic going through their downtown.
Yeah.
And it reduced the traffic down to where people could basically walk anywhere across the street anywhere, because all the traffic went through the downtown so slowly, but it kept moving.
Right.
And so that the traffic was solved by the fact that it just kept moving, and the pedestrian situation was improved by the fact that pedestrians could just cross the street
Do they
anywhere.
have a train?
No, I don't think so, but they had a very busy highway going through
I think the
their
issue with the
downtown.
downtown area is just not enough room to.
Yeah, no way.
Not enough right of way to put that something like that in. But at this intersection, north and west and Harding is another area that could be a potential for roundabouts as well. But this one here has been, like I said, earmarked for some money from the congressman's office.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to hear that there are roundabouts a solution.
So I like roundabouts in certain places, and I actually think looking at it for the north, Harding is worth, and if there was some way to solve the west problem by doing that in a roundabout, that would be wonderful. I'm not sure how easy that is. So we'll get to, that's not on today's agenda,
No.
but that's actually a discussion we need to have sooner rather than later.
Those are these white hairs right here.
Relative to the, I don't agree that this is a good spot for a roundabout. So if the roundabout is gonna cost us 800,000, where we use the federal funds, would cost us 800,000 plus whatever the taking cost is on top of that to put in something that personally I don't think is the right thing for that intersection. I'm not really keen on doing that. The recognizing that the first thing you showed.
The dedicated
was
turn lanes with the
dedicated
traffic
turning
lights.
lane, we would have to fund on our own is 1.4 million. This is amateur hour, so I fully understand what I'm doing here. I would want to know what it would cost to put the turning lanes on Route 27 and not put them on west. Because I don't think it's west, people going, I use that every day practically. People going across Route 27 don't do, it's not as hard to know what's going on there as it is when you're coming up 27 or going down 27, you want to make a left turn. So I'd be curious, if we got to do it on our own, what it would cost to simply put in 2 turning lanes on 27 alone, and not, you might do some things with the other stuff.
It might be a little cheaper, but also they look at the level of service. So the level of service is going to determine if that scenario could happen with the safety, because they look at the level of service of how safety is incorporated into it.
Right.
So if they see that people are going around people, they'll like they are now. With the roads that we have on 27, it's so wide that people can go around.
Right.
And the left-hand turn gets queued up where you can't see around. On the West Street approaches, I'm not sure if people would be able to see, because it's more narrow. So the level of service for safety, I'm not sure if it would change or not.
I could tell you, I use West Street, usually headed west more.
Yep.
I don't, typically if people are on West Street, the ones going west on West Street, yeah, they're turning left on 27. Not that many people coming east on West Street are turning right onto 27. They're not even necessarily turning left.
I believe they did traffic counts. I believe they did traffic counts, so they probably have the turns and everything else on there.
I would
on
be
their
curious
data.
about how many accidents, T-bones or otherwise, occur
In that
with
approaches.
2 cars with a green light on west.
Right.
I don't think that happens very much, because your sight lines are better. You actually, you're approaching the intersection at a slower speed.
Exactly.
People kind of, if you're using it, chances are you sort of live somewhere around. You kind of know how it works.
Right.
Whereas North Meadows, it's already a 45 to 50 mile an hour speed limit as they hit that intersection, and so it's the whole mindset's low. It's amateur hour. I understand. I may not know what I'm talking about, but if
You
we
bring up
have
a
to
good point.
tell the federal government and our representatives take your money and keep it because you're going to give us money. It's going to cost us a lot of money to do something that doesn't really make sense in this intersection. I would look awfully hard at what our alternatives are. And I think one of them could be worrying about just North Meadows having formal turn lanes, not be so worried about West Street. But that's.
I'm not sure how much money it would save us taking those turning lanes away on the, can you go back to the other one? To the top?
Well, can I ask a clarifying question? Because you made a couple of statements, and I think Pete did too, that you just said that it's not an automatic. It's not like you can't bring a request forward. If you can bring the request forward with reasons that would make sense, then it's not
Correct.
we're automatically going to have to pay.
Correct, but
So
you'd have to prove to the state or negotiate with the state with good points of why it shouldn't be a roundabout.
Okay, but that's I mean that's
I mean,
to be
it's a
taken into
it's a
consideration.
possibility.
Yeah.
And how is it that the state gets to stick its nose into federal earmarks coming to the town?
Because it goes through the MassDOT process. The federal funding, the project goes through MassDOT, and if it goes through MassDOT, this is what they're pushing now.
One other observation I'd make, right now on this diagram, the green on North Meadows, those represent the bike lanes, right?
On North Meadows, those are the bike lanes.
When you go to a rotary, now you've got, because those are pretty good, I've used them, they're pretty good. They're wide, the road is wide, so you don't have people with their rear view mirrors zipping by your shoulder 2 feet away, even if they don't move over. My sense is in a rotary, you've just got stuff a whole lot more complicated for bikes trying to get around.
There's no bike lanes shown on their scenario in the roundabout.
There was a little strip of green.
Could you
Then
go
you
back
said-
to that one?
Then when you
Sorry.
said the orange was a multiple use lane.
Was
I
a
didn't
shared
know what
use
that
path.
meant.
They show those green things in the rotary are just raised medians so people don't go off.
So they'd have to, so if a
So it's
bike
like-
rider came into this intersection on.
They would have to
headed
do
north
the
on
same
North
as a motor vehicle. They would have to yield as a motor vehicle, same thing, because there's no bike lane going through there.
Yikes.
So they'd be getting out into the right turn only, like, if I'm going north on North Meadows and I want to turn right onto West, the bike riders would be pulling out into traffic, probably not in the middle of the lane, we would hope, on a rotary, and they'd basically be out in the right turn only lane. I guess they just have to commandeer it.
It would be the same as them being on a regular roadway, just on a round curve, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it's an improvement to me, but.
Especially because you have kids who access it from the neighborhood to get to the school.
You can see in this scenario where the green at the both ends, where the bike lane ends.
Right.
So then it's a free-for-all after that, looks like.
Okay.
But there are
I know
crosswalks.
there's a lot of streets that say, oh, bike riders can use the whole lane. I don't think the best idea for doing that is a rotary where you have to be at a stop until you have an opening, and then you punch your bike out into the middle of a lane of cars going around a rotary. That's not, I don't see that as being a really safe concept for the state or anybody. So,
And that's why I think, I actually talked to the chief about this, because I was asking her, based on the accident that occurred a few weeks back, that thank God no one was killed, but
Yep.
there was a woman that was seriously injured. If this was Norfolk Center, where everybody's approaching at maybe 20, 25 miles an hour, I would say this is a no-brainer, because even the bicyclists aren't being approached at a fast pace.
Right.
But I would go to the state and very comfortably debate that you've got speeds, you've got a flat straightaway where people are going fast. I almost got T-boned today. I was going up to the state hospital, the idea of having a turn lane and a dedicated light, to me, is a lot safer, because you have now better visibility. We're not slowing down the speed on 27. So as much as I think the discussion when we talk about North and Harding is a scenario where a rotary, if the state would then fund it, I would say to them, we're not opposed to it. In certain parts of Medfield, it would make sense. This is one intersection that I absolutely don't think it makes sense. I'm not, that's not a knock to you. That's just
No,
that's
I understand that. And as devil's advocate, they may say, well, we can have a traffic study and reduce the speed entering into that by putting in pre-warning and putting in different speed limits along both approaches. But I mean, they could probably say that, but
But I would
is that
argue
gonna-
it's not, when you've had the same intersection for as long as you have, and you have people, it's just not, unless, to me, it just doesn't make sense that when a traffic light in this scenario would, I think, be a little bit more effective, especially knowing there's kids cutting across there to go up to an elementary school. There's access there that a rotary I mean, even if they did a study and watch how many cyclists go up and down 27, it's just one of those routes because you can go straight and then cut up through Millis. That yeah, I'd be worth, Christine, if we have to push back and go to the state.
So this
with
is
the
a
case.
this is a conceptual from the state when they did their study.
Okay.
Our consultant has probably close to the same version of a conceptual, but not anything that was designed yet. So waiting for the town's decision on which route to take.
Okay.
So do you think that Mass Highway would be open to sitting down to meet with
I'm
you,
sure they
me,
would.
and myself to have a conversation about
I'm sure they would.
before we pick a path what we're really looking at?
Yep.
Right. That'd be good.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of rotaries. The rotaries headed out to the Cape. I'm trying to picture. The issue is you got a 30 mile an hour road intersecting with a 45 or 50 mile an hour road, and I'm saying, well, that's kind of like when you go out to the Cape. There's rotaries like at Falmouth, and people sort of figure it out, but it's like
The smaller rotaries are one lane. The larger ones, like the Bourne Rotary or the Sagamore, you have multiple lanes going around, so it's a little bit different scenario. But
Then I'm trying to think of the rotary you go around when you're coming off of 128, coming up from the train station, that was it Dean Street or whatever it is. And it's like, well, that one kind of works, but that's a pretty big rotary, and it's not even really a rotary. It is a rotary, but it's
It's just redirecting you, so you don't have to take a left and a right.
Right.
if you go up Route 126 in Ashland, there's a Market Basket Plaza. You got a new rotary there, a new roundabout there.
Yep.
I'm sure.
Not good, right?
I shop at that market.
But they're popping up everywhere. Framingham's got 2 new rotaries that have gone in the last year. Natick has a new one in front of the Dairy Queen that's proving to be
yeah,
some
it does.
issue.
Yeah, it does. We
Yes.
just did that one.
On
That's-
27.
Except for the fact that I wasn't expecting it. I
Really
hadn't been up there,
small,
and it's
it's
like,
really tight.
well,
too.
like the one in Norfolk, I actually like
The
rotaries.
two of them right
It's not
there
like
next
I
to them.
dislike rotaries because they can adjust the flow. It's one of the reasons I like it with North and Harding. It's like, well, there's certain times of the day it's commuting flow, and there's certain times of the day it's in-town flow. So rather than trying to control it with some sort of a light, it's a good enough place that people can regulate, and it can be rational. So it's not like I'm against rotaries.
Yep.
And I've had a lot of fun in some of the rotaries over in Europe.
Well,
They had a stick shift in those rotaries. Those are a lot of fun. But I just don't think that one makes sense.
So I got something from our consultant. Due to the federal funding and intersection control evaluation, ICE process, a roundabout has to be considered.
I'm
Okay.
considering it.
So we're considering it.
Right, based on our past conversation with Mass DOT regarding the intersection project, they will be adamant about installing a roundabout over a traffic signal. During the past few years, Mass DOT has not strayed from the installation of a roundabout due to required land takings unless there are buildings involved.
Over a traffic signal. We are not saying put a traffic signal in here. We have a
We
traffic
have one,
signal.
exactly.
We're just
They would
talking
have to be
about putting in-
replaced, basically.
So do we have to replace the light if we just put a turn signal in, so we're at least giving better line of sight? Because I know, actually, I'll give you
Those are antiquated lights, so yeah, they're not going to be fooled by that one. But
well, I mean, that's what they did down in Mashpee. If you go down 151, they just have a left-hand turn. There's no turn signal. But as you're going away from Falmouth up towards Mashpee on 151, it's just a widened area. And so I've seen it done, and it works. And even if the state comes and look at where that accident occurred a few weeks ago, there is a serious gully there. So as we then take that land, we've got to fill that in some way, shape, or form, because if you're going to ask bicyclists to be along the edge of that, I mean, that intersection just, to me, does not play into making sense. Both on the coming from West Street and coming from 27, they both dip down. So how do you then build that up to make it safe versus doing what we're asking the state, evaluate the light, or do we have to put a new light in if we just want to repaint?
there would definitely be slope easements to be considered, construction easements that you would have to grade it away from that area. So there is going to be a lot of fill to take in and regrade the area. So it's not a small project. That's why it's about a $1.8 million. That's why it's more than the traffic signal one. So I mean, if the state's really adamant about it, but if we can come up with some legitimate reasons why it shouldn't go in there and see how they react to it.
So I've got a couple thoughts. First is that I don't think there's a lot of bicycle traffic on Route 27.
Oh.
So that's the first thought. The second thought is that I think that we need to engage in some education for my colleagues on the select board on the benefits of rotaries, because clearly the state is telling us that as a policy matter, they think they're safer and better. And so that for my colleagues to be substituting their judgment
No, talk to the
for
chief.
the
If you heard what I said,
traffic
Pete, I literally talked to
engineers
the chief about
that the state is talking about and suggesting to us, clearly they're telling us that they want the roundabouts. I think it makes absolute sense to do the roundabout.
I don't think it would
like
hurt-
the ones on the VFW Parkway. My favorite one is the one on by Babson College at the bottom of the hill on 135. Wellesley took what was a larger roundabout and shrunk it so that to go through the roundabout, you have to really slow down. And that's what you could do in something like this. You can,
I think if I can get a representative from Mass DOT and with our consultant as well, and have a little meeting on the side to kind of discuss and see what,
Yeah, I mean,
their
we're not-
views are. I mean, are you guys open to that?
we're not traffic experts, but
No.
but I just happen to have read enough about roundabouts that I'm in favor of them.
So Pete, I just want to clearly,
Experience driving them.
I just want to clearly state, I don't particularly care for you saying we didn't do our homework. I sat with
I
the
didn't
chief.
say
and
you
talked-
did your
Well,
homework.
I'm
I'm saying that-
throwing my 2 cents
I'm
in. No, I'm
saying-
sitting with the chief who happens to watch this and gave 19 tickets in a matter of about 4 minutes. So we know we have a problem there. This is not Eileen Murphy making up her mind on it. I sat to the woman who's leading this and watches what's going on traffic-wise. So I'm just saying that I took offense to you making like I'm just going off on a limb. I'm not. I sat with the chief. And to her input to me matters a lot.
Well, did the chief say that she didn't want a roundabout?
I'm not going to put words in her mouth right now because I don't want her to bring it, but I know what she recommended and what her concerns were with what can happen there versus having turn lanes. No one is perfect, but there are ones that will feed better, especially knowing that we have a roadway that people approach that light, and if they try to beat the yellow, they're doing somewhere around 45 or 50. So it's a concern.
Eileen, all I'm suggesting is that clearly the state and its traffic engineers are suggesting that roundabouts are a better solution because they're pushing us that direction financially. They're incenting us to do that. So I think that they've probably come up with some sort of conclusion that roundabouts are a better solution for us. And I think for us to just ignore that and say that we know better than the traffic engineers is maybe not the best route for us to take, and that we should
So everything the
have a
state
more
recommends.
thoughtful response to it.
So everything the state recommends, we should never even second guess or check or second guess when we know what our backyard is. Well, and we know what happens in Medfield better than somebody at the State House. I'm not knocking that they've done reviews and analyzed rotaries and roundabouts, but I just think we have the right to push back and ask questions. That's all I'm asking for.
Like I said, I just wanted to bring up the intersection as a discussion point because we do want to make safety improvements, and so just wanted to get the ball rolling with that. But I think a conversation with the state to see what the best scenario would be, and to see what the costs and
Yeah, and if the state's saying, well, we'll give you money, but then in order to give you money, in order for you to do it, it's actually going to you're going to have to spend almost as much as you'd have to do what you would prefer to do on that.
And I'm not sure what the assessment. We'd have to get an appraiser in to do the assessment on the land takings and the different easements that are necessary. But again, when we just have to have a direction for the consultant to go to. So I just wanted to bring that information and see what the thoughts were, and maybe we can get a meeting together with the state.
Thanks for sparking the
I know it, huh?
discussion for us.
Hey, thanks for having me on first, by the way.
All right.
You're not off yet, though.
Oh no, I'm not.
All right, and then you get to, we can announce the ribbon cutting for the water treatment plant on June 17th.
Oh yeah,
at 10
June
a.m.
17th at 10 a.m. Our water treatment plant is with the consultant. We kind of made accommodations that the project is just about completely done, and we're off and running. So the ribbon cutting ceremony will be on Monday on the 17th at 10 a.m. and hopefully everybody can make it. And
Where?
it's going to be at the treatment plant on site.
Where?
It's that's good. Behind Wheelock School, down the. It's actually, I think it's what's the address? It's like 43 Elm Street Rare or something like that. But
So you're gonna have to do a dry run just to make sure I can find. I thought
there you
that
go.
was where we were talking, but I'm not sure where.
if you go to the left of Wheelock down that drive
Yep.
where the soccer
Yeah,
soccer fields are, follow
Go-
that road.
Keep going down.
Go
Okay.
straight, you'll run right into it.
You can walk, we can walk our dogs in.
That's
Unlike the tree,
On
we
or
couldn't
off
to the
leash?
cemetery. Off leash.
There is a fence, so I'll have to let you in. But the project came out really well. We were under budget, and it's really good for the town.
Fantastic. All right.
There was something that I saw recently about PFAS that have they, I mean, I know that the EPA has come out with their numbers.
Yep.
Oh, it was that there is a different way of treating for the PFAS and removing them that was less costly. Did I send you that link?
I don't know if you sent.
Did
I went to
send that?
I did go to the discussion that was on this morning through Mass DEP. So I was on that discussion. So basically, we're at 20 parts per trillion today. They've changed it to the MCL now is 4 parts per trillion, but there's different variations because there's different compounds that they're using. Some are at 4, some are at 10, but the concentration of the 4 are more prevalent in the PFAS compound.
So when I read, I think you sent something that I read, and I was trying to figure out whether the 20 parts per trillion was the collective parts of all of the different
The
chemicals.
PFAS 6, we had PFAS 6, so we had 6 compounds that they
Yeah.
were using to
collectively are 20?
do
Okay.
with the sampling. Now, there's different compounds that they're adding to it, but at different. Some are 4 parts per trillion, some are 10 parts per trillion.
So that led me to the question, so is that really a significant tightening of the 20 parts per trillion combination?
It's
Or is
going.
it just
It's
there's
going
more
to
ways you
affect
can
us.
fail?
It's going to affect
Okay.
us in at least 2 of our wells.
Okay.
So we have to prepare for that. We've done studies on those 2 wells and how to treat those 2 wells if we were to do it. But it's costly. It's
And those are the ones behind Wheelock?
no, those are the ones at the Millis town line.
Oh,
Wells 1 and 2. Those are the
Middle
ones
of
that
the
we
river.
have. We're under the 20 parts per trillion, but if you drop it to 4, we're over the MCL. So
So I still want to understand. So if, like those 2 wells were when we were looking before, they were well under the 20 parts per trillion, so they weren't a problem. Now you're saying, but they probably will be a problem, but is that because the specific chemicals that affect that well are ones that are subject to the 4 parts per trillion, or is it that?
yeah, but so PFAS, the major compounds that are being tested are more prevalent than the lesser compounds. That's why they give more 10 parts per trillion versus 4. So you're going to see the more prevalent compounds are going to have the heavier weights. So we're going to be, right now we're anywhere between 15 to 19 parts per trillion in wells 1 and 2 combined. So that means if they drop it to 4, we have never been under 4 in those 2 wells. But we've been in compliance all these years, but now they're dropping it to 4. We're going to be over in those 2 wells, so we're going to have to make a decision how to treat those wells, whether we try to combine those wells with the other wells, the existing wells that we have. Do we shut them down? Do we use them as emergency? There's a lot of things to consider, but there is a good price tag to put in granulated active carbon filters to get rid of the PFAS, to get it under the legal limit. So, and the space constraints are tight in that area too, because we don't have a lot of land, but we are able to do something there if we had to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thanks for the discussion. And
Bill, sorry. Didn't even.
whoops.
The mic is no longer sitting next to you. We got to get you up there. Mike, is the mic on or is it?
It's on. It's on. Dom Sorrow. Just wanted to make a comment. We have the same PFAS concerns with DCAM. DCAM is still trying to figure out how they're going to meet the new requirements as well. So I have discussed it with Susan at DCAM and suggested that at some point she should sit down and talk to Mo, figuring out what we have at the Charles River site.
Okay.
You know, what are the PFAS there? So they will be talking, I hope, at some point. And every
Yep.
time I talk to her, a reminder that it was a requirement. When we knew the changes were coming from the 20 parts per million to 4, I had reminded her that it was coming and that they were going to have to address it. So it's still one of the action items that we have with them.
So is that drinking water?
Well, it is a potentially productive aquifer. So
But if we're not, are we,
So
we
we're
are
not,
using it, we're not using
we're
it. Why
not
is DCAM
sampling,
involved?
we're not sampling, we only sample at our wells because of the finished water that we're
Right.
producing to town. So our wells, we have the 5 wells that are in operation, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So those wells we sample all the time.
Bill's talking about the laundry parcel where the cleanup was. So they're still doing water quality testing there, and they've
Right.
picked up.
So what I was getting at is the standard for that water, nobody's drinking. So it's not drinking water, we're just saying.
It's it's gonna be groundwater.
it is right.
And so the same even if you're not
It's-
tapping it, you have to clean it? I'm just trying to understand why DCAM is, what it is. that
Well,
DCAM
the issue
does.
is they'd never tested for it before, so they have no idea what's even there in terms of it. So that's one of the requirements that I'm trying to get done, so we know what their obligations are, if they have any, or if we're all right. So, but they do have to do testing.
If they tested though, are they, I guess what I'm asking is,
What are they going to do after they find something?
if they, let's assume if they're testing and there's stuff there and assume that it's above the 4 parts per trillion limit or the 10 parts per trillion limit, we're not drawing water from that site. We're not drinking that water. It's DCAM property. I'm just trying to understand what the actual.
It
obligation
is still within a potentially productive
I think what
aquifer.
Bill's saying, it goes into the aquifer,
Because
the
it's
aquifer,
part-
we pump it through the aquifer.
It's
into our
downstream from where we pump, which is one of the arguments that we had with the original cleanup, because they kept
Right.
saying it's not ever going to affect what's there, it's never
Right.
going to affect what's upstream at the well and everything else. But
Mm-hmm.
we continue to push. The idea of having a potentially productive aquifer is, what if you need it at some time in the future? You need to know what's going on. So that was our argument there, to get the cleanup.
So it's just, I'm just trying to understand the point, Bill. It's one thing to say they need to test for it so we know what that water looks like. More importantly, so DCAM knows what the water
They
looks
have a
like.
requirement from EPA to test.
So we're required to test in our drinking water, not into our groundwater at this
Mm-hmm. Right.
point. But
Is it-
DCAM is required for the groundwater.
So if they test that groundwater and they detect that they're not in compliance with drinking water standards for PFAS, what is the implication for DCAM?
I can't, without having what they found, I can't address it. I mean, the issue is,
I think DCAM has the same question.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if, put it a different way, if we tested our aquifer, and it's an aquifer, let's say, that we're not using, but as an aquifer that we consider important, so we have no wells, just the aquifer, and we detected PFAS that was out of compliance, how would we deal with it?
We would have to pump it through wells to get it into our drinking water and and put our chemicals through it
Sure, okay.
and see what the finished water would be, what
Right.
would test for.
So that's what I'm getting at. The point that you intervene is when you're pumping water and purifying the water, there's no other alternative that says we're gonna salt the aquifer with some sort of PFAS fighting chemicals, okay?
But it's all kind of a full circle where it's
Right.
public outreach, explaining everything,
Yeah,
what people throw into the water, into the, whether it's trash into the Charles River that has PFAS components that break down, well, the PFAS doesn't break down, but the components do, adds to the aquifer, to the groundwater, eventually pumps in. So you could have different times, you have more PFAS in your water, less PFAS in your water.
yeah, okay.
Right.
All right, just wondered significance there.
All right, one more.
It's not what I came here to talk about, but some history about this.
Just name and address, just
Oh,
so.
Bob Allison, Green Street. Back around 1995, when we first had an issue with those 2 wells, my memory is that we did some test wells around it to try and figure out where the contaminants were coming from. So I think maybe there is some mitigation that can be done if we know where those PFAS are coming
So-
from.
Really different.
So I just want to put that back into
Yeah.
the
So,
thought process.
so DEP requires everyone along the Charles River to test for everything. So they've gotten more stringent and added more and more sampling all around the area. So it's going to be, not irrelevant, but it's going to be, it's hard to determine where these things come from because it's everywhere. It's and everything. Even when it's funny because when our guys go out to sample, if they have a high-vis jacket on,
That has it.
you could get residual from the jacket even just sampling. And it's a little crazy, but that's truth. I mean, it's
If you had waffles for breakfast, who knows?
exactly. So it's very difficult to
They've done
pinpoint.
nothing about regulating the production, let alone prohibiting it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Crazy. All right. Thank you
Thank
very
you, Mo.
much.
Have a great night. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, thank you for the two spots on the roadways that I emailed you about. I saw that those got fixed, so thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, Dan Merkin to request a vote to sign the private road agreement with Hillcrest Builders LLC for Garrison Path definitive subdivision. Come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Dan American with Legacy Engineering. Garrison Path is a small two-lot subdivision at 74 Harding Street. It's been recently approved by the planning board. It was approved as a private way construction. So what is traditionally done with that is that the property owner executes a covenant that says that they will never seek that the road be accepted as a public way. So what we're here to ask you for, town council has reviewed the document in question. We prepared it with Maria. We're here to asking you to execute, to countersign that. The developer has already signed the covenant, and you would countersign it, and then we would record it at the Registry of Deeds. And it would basically preclude any of the future property owners from ever asking the town to take that Garrison Path as a public road.
It's a little broader than that. It also means that the owner or owners of the property have exclusive responsibility for maintaining it, for snow removal, for stormwater, maintenance and replacement. So it's essentially this does not benefit the developer, this covenant. It's to benefit or protect the town down the road when some other owner comes in not clear. This way they will be clear because they'll have constructive notice. It's on record at the registry. But it also legally is the best we can do to preclude them from coming to the town and saying the road needs to be replaced, the stormwater structures need to be replaced, whatever, we want the town to take it over.
Would you be putting up a sign like Garrison Path private way, so there's no gray area? We have signs in town where, because it doesn't say that, people move in 30 years later and are under the impression that it's a town-owned street.
It hasn't come up, but we can do that, sure. That's not a problem.
Because there's nothing in a deed that would mark to the real estate transaction that would say what you just said. They would have to look into
Well,
it deeper.
The planning board
When
approval is on record.
when you run a title, it's more than just a deed. If somebody does a title that knows what they're doing, professional, they're gonna look at the subdivision decision from the planning board, they're gonna look at the covenant, they're gonna see everything on record with names.
Okay.
So it's there, so that's what I alluded to a moment ago. They're either gonna have actual notice because their title examiner does their job, or even if he screws up and misses it, they'll have constructive notice because it's on record at the registry.
Okay.
So the reality is, however, that you've got this nice title exam that goes back decades, and most conveyancers don't share that title exam with the buyers. And so most buyers go away from their closing not getting that piece of history about their property, which is very, when I did conveyancing, I always made a copy of it for the buyers because I assumed that they would enjoy having it, if nothing else, to just know what their property had been over.
There was a time, you and I recall, when you'd go to a closing and somebody would walk you through not just all the documents you signed for the bank, but what they found when they ran the title, and they tell you about it. And that's to protect the attorney who does a closing as well, because they have exposure potentially if something bad comes up down the road and the buyer didn't know about it but could have had somebody taken the time to explain it.
And we have drafted the deed for the existing home, which is going to be sold shortly, and there is a reference to this covenant in that deed. So once this covenant gets executed and recorded, that reference will be filled out prior to that deed being recorded, so that that deed and all future deeds will have reference to it.
So Dan, I don't have a question about this. My question has to do with the easement that the town requested, and my understanding was that initially, the developer was willing to give the town an easement to our land, which is adjacent to the back lot, and then at some point they changed their mind. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I don't know that they changed their mind. There was a conversation that the planning board was going to require the granting of the easement, that the developer would comply with that, but that was not a requirement of the subdivision approval. So I think it's a fairly contentious topic up there. Neighbors opposed. So at this point,
Well, not all the neighbors. I mean, there's some neighbors who abut the
the one
town
party
right-of-way,
who
and so that
abuts
they don't want the town using that existing right-of-way that
the
the
one
town
party who
has.
abuts your right of way is not opposed to it, but the rest of them are. So at this point, we have a buyer who's been signed up to buy the existing home that's been under renovation for 6 months, and they've been signed up to buy that for 6 months. So it not being a requirement of the permitting, the developer went to that party and asked them if they'd be willing to entertain the notion of granting of an easement to the town, and they said that they were not inclined to do so. So that's kind of where we stand at this
All
point.
right, so it's the developer asking his buyer or her buyer, and the buyer not wanting to do it. So I can understand that then.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You all set?
Yep.
I do not understand it. And,
Okay.
and I will not support this for that reason. It may not matter, but I'm not prepared to agree to this covenant. The reason, and my issue has to do with the easement to Hinckley North, absolutely. My purpose in first being interested in getting that easement to give the town access to Hinckley North was twofold. First, I wanted the town to be able to develop the Hinckley North property and to recover money from it from a commercial developer at market price. We have a major school program that's coming up right now. The warrant committee and I think the building committee have both projected $1,000 to $1,200 increase to the average real estate bill when this project finally comes to fruition. When and if, I guess, but let's say when. And I have been doing everything I can to think of ways that the town can raise money not on the tax levy to begin to help pay for that school. So my interest was in giving the town the opportunity to potentially get what might be between $500,000 and $750,000 for that property, because there's about 1.5 acres up there. So if you figure an acre of property that's developable in town is worth $500,000, you can do the math. It may not be enough to have two different spots. My first issue, my second reason was I'm aware of the easement. That's kind of going to be an awkward easement for the two abutters that are on the corner, and I've explained it in detail before the town meeting on why I was doing what I was doing. I think both of them should have opposed it because they're the ones that will pay the price. Because if we are effectively blocked off from our own property, which is what having Garrison Path go in with no easement to get in that way, the only way we get to use that property is through that easement. And the only way we can use that easement is under the Dover Amendment, which ensures we won't get the money that was what I was really interested in getting. And that money could have come from the abutters. If they had wanted to pay to buy that property and lock it up, that would have been just fine. But instead what we have right now is, I think, abutters who are hoping that the town will quite happily set aside a $500,000 piece of property for their exclusive use. It would be a very nice view out their backyard, having a 5-acre wooded lot that they don't have to pay taxes on and that they don't have to worry about anybody interfering with. So I'm not happy first with the planning board, because I think the planning board, if they had discussions with you over that easement, assuming that the developer was prepared to grant that easement as part of the development, they should have pursued that. And at the time, my understanding was before you had a buyer, I understand if you ask a buyer, would you mind if we put an easement on your property? What the heck do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, no, of course not. I wouldn't just grant an easement for the fun of it. It was the developer that needed to do that, and my understanding was that the planning board had said, well, it's the way the plan is here, we don't want to disrupt that. And then I also heard, and the developer would still be willing to give us an easement, which is why I didn't make a big stink about it before the town meeting with the planning board. But then after the town meeting, again, I heard that the developer was willing to discuss putting an easement in place. So the credibility of this developer with me is very low. I'm not happy with the planning board. I understand the process. I understand the purpose of this covenant is for other things, but I'd like to see a covenant that actually has that easement in it. Because we already have on the other easement, they've already had the owner come to us and say, I didn't know there was an easement here. And it's like, look on the plot plan. Well, my lawyer, the town should have told me that. And it's like, no, it has to be documented and owners have to understand it's there. So I'm not at all happy about this because this has just cost the taxpayers of this town probably somewhere between $500,000 and $750,000 because we can't get an easement to get to our own property. When we bought the Redgate Farm down on Phillips Street, we discovered that we had land that had been donated to the town years ago called Scout Land, big upland woodland. It's beautiful property. You couldn't get to it. You know why? Because it was a donut hole surrounded by a donut made up of private property owners that wouldn't provide any easements. You had to go all the way to the Walpole line to a path that you would need a machete to get through that nobody knew about to get to the Scout Lands until we bought the Redgate Farm and it gave us access to land that was the town's all along. I learned from there, don't let town land be surrounded by a donut. And here we are constructing a donut, and I'm not happy. So I'm giving it to you because you're the representative that's here.
Sure.
But I'm not happy on how this played out. I'm not happy on how this information was represented prior to the town meeting and even after the town meeting. And here we are. So
May I
it does not
respond?
have my vote to approve it.
May I respond?
Please.
So I hope you can appreciate that this particular developer was kind of stuck between different parties with different goals and different objectives, and we did our best to work through the permitting process in a way that we thought was reasonable. But I think you need to understand that the easement has nothing to do with changing the developable nature of your land.
But
you
it does, we can't get the frontage.
So-
That's the issue.
Okay, so you cannot create a buildable lot that complies with zoning through the granting of this easement that you're seeking. It's not possible. You don't meet the frontage requirements, you don't meet the width requirements, you don't meet a whole variety of zoning requirements. So all this would do is really provide a second non-standard form of access.
It's
You're
better,
not-
but Dan, it's better access. It's much better access than we have right now.
I'm just trying to respond,
yeah,
though.
yeah,
So
yeah.
just to
Okay.
understand that, this piece of, and I've looked at your piece of land, it's a non-standard zoning use type of development. It's Dover Amendment. It's one of those types of uses. You don't meet the requirements of zoning to make it buildable, say, for a single-family home.
What I could tell you is we had interest from developers who wanted to look at that and see what they could do with it. But I have a question now because you're making a point that's opposite what I thought was the point. When we were talking about trying to get the easement onto Garrison Path, I thought that enabled us to be able to use that for commercial development. Is that not true? It was never true?
It's never.
I don't recall ever being asked that. As far as I'm concerned, the information, the position Dan just stated, I don't have any basis for saying otherwise. It was not a buildable lot.
Can you confirm?
So Gus, it's not commercial use, it's residential use.
Residential
It's
use,
zoned
yeah,
for residential
absolutely.
use.
Residential
But
use.
the question is, can it be developed under zoning? And the answer is no, even
Well,
with or
if-
without
if-
the easement.
In combination with his client's land, there was potential synergy there, potentially. I don't know anything about the topography or anything else, but viewed in isolation, it had very limited.
My assumption was always that if we wanted to develop it to the maximum extent possible, that we'd have to build a subdivision road off of Garrison Path. And I'm not sure that that's economic, but I mean, in my mind, I wasn't looking for that. I was looking
If you
to,
build a subdivision road, generally speaking, in addition to access, you're getting frontage off it. And so, I don't know what the length of that road is. There's a limitation in the planning board rules and regs on the length of a non-through road. And then there's how much frontage you would actually get, even if you did a paper cul-de-sac but didn't build it out. I mean, there are ways around it, but the perception I had was there was a potential Dover Amendment 40 section, General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 3, use.
Well, in my mind, it was just more options. I didn't have any particular use in mind, but I wanted the town to have as many possible options to maximize the value of the land for the town. And I saw getting a better access out to Harding Street as a win for the town. And so I was asking our land use director early on if she couldn't approach the developer and ask us for an easement. And then it seemed to get balled up in the planning board. And then I understood that the planning board turned us down because the select board asked the planning board to include the easement, and they refused, is my understanding. And then I thought the town was going to go back to the developer, and at that point, I think that's when the developer said no. And if their buyer is telling them no at that point, I say I understand, but I'm as upset as Gus is that, you know, that it originally I was told originally at least that the developer was willing to do this, and somehow it just never got executed on when that was when that was a possibility. And so now the town is going to lose something.
I'm trying really hard not to be in the middle here.
Yeah.
The planning board took a certain approach.
Yep.
You guys took a different approach.
Yep.
We had a bunch of angry neighbors yelling and screaming. The developer, we just tried to get through the permitting process in a way that we thought was reasonable. And, you know, I did say, and I do say, that if the planning board had required us or said that this is something that we need to see on the plan, it would have been done. But that's not the way it went. And we had a bunch of neighbors who were really, really unhappy about the prospect of that easement being granted to the town. So the developer is stuck in a very awkward position. So
I will say something. In the future, a developer in this town might give some weight to whether they have angry select board members over a group of neighbors who live close to me, who basically had a self-serving reason to want to downplay the value of the property, to push to not, I think it was foolish, at least for the two that have the current easement that would be used if we use the property. But perhaps the developer should have worried a little less about what the neighbors thought, a little more about what we thought. And my issue isn't, I don't blame you for listening to the planning board. I already started off by saying my major issue, first issue, is the planning board that did not look ahead and so casually dismissed the value that we could have gotten, or potentially at least, from that property. That's my first beef. But I can tell you that the information flow that we were getting around this issue was that this was still something that was open for negotiation and still something that could be done even after the town meeting. So now you know it's not just neighbors that are angry. You know that it's select board members, at least one and a half, or maybe two, who are angry. I understand you're in the middle, so I'm not attacking you. And my guess is, as a legal matter, in a sense, it doesn't matter, I guess. But I can tell you, not being a lawyer, all of a sudden now, nobody seems to think we were talking about anything but Dover Amendment, and that is absolutely not the conversations we've had on this board.
Right.
So I'm really pretty upset. The whole point of that, it is true, it would be a better easement, even for a Dover Amendment use, because you're not putting it up on the corner. But the whole purpose for this, for me, the whole reason I forced this issue was because I'm trying to find ways for the town to recover money on its assets that it doesn't need to hang on to. We're not a land bank, we're not a land distribution or speculation company. We have a piece of property. It has potential value as a saleable, developable piece of property. To be honest with you, it occurred to me that the developer might have said, well, gee, if I could put a third house there, then I'll extend Garrison Path there. So there were, not that I suggested it, but
let me talk to you about that. So it's a timing problem, right? Our neighbor to the right, that house was just redeveloped, right? Like I think if it had been known that this land was out there for sale, maybe the person who redeveloped that home might have tried to do something here. If we had known 6 months ago, it would have been a whole different conversation. But the developer spent a lot of money designing a subdivision that we put before the planning board before we knew that that land was actually planned to be put up for sale if you could obtain approval to do so. So it really was just, it was a timing issue. You know, if it all came together 12 months earlier or 8 months earlier, we would be having a different conversation, potentially. But I will tell you this, I mean, I've been doing what I do for 30 years. Your land would not achieve a different status with the granting of the easement. Now, maybe it's a better access. I don't disagree there, but it's not going to make it a lot that could be developed unless the town itself, as town council indicated, took the easement that they got over Garrison Path with this easement to your land and went through a subdivision approval process and then built another road extension, which offsets the value of your land, right? You're now facing the same quandary that builders face all the time. Do I want to invest in permitting in a road to create one buildable lot? Does that make sense economically? Usually the answer is no, because it doesn't make sense economically. That, you know, you have to appreciate that the cost that goes into all of that detracts from the value of the land, so you're probably better off just putting it out there for some type of Dover Amendment type of use and seeing what you could get for the land.
So here's what I've heard. When this first came up years ago, I think people were just using the straight acreage, not taking into account the wetlands, and talked about you could probably put 4 or 5 houses up there. Not taking into account the wetlands. The wetlands issue came up because it also would have been possible to have connected to Hinckley South except for the wetlands. And the wetlands migrate, so it's not even like anybody was hiding things, but basically the usable land dropped down. It initially dropped down, I think, to 2 or 3, and then it dropped down to 1 or 2 houses that could go in up there. And now, with what I've seen, it sounds like it could possibly be 1.5 acres, and maybe it's 1 house, or maybe it's a townhouse or something like that. I know the Affordable Housing Trust has looked at using that land for various purposes.
Sure.
Sounds like that might still be viable, I suppose. Yeah. It sounds like, and I'm not going to hold you to the words you just said here, but as you said, 6 or 8 months ago, the developer might have looked at that, which tells me when we say it's not any good for housing, well, at least it's potentially good for housing. When I hear that there were developers who were interested, had we been authorized to sell it with the town meeting article, there were developers who were interested in looking at it. Mm-hmm. That tells me the potential's there. I'm not claiming that I know anything. I know that the people who spoke against the article downplayed it. Oh, the decision to buy that property a long time ago was a bad financial decision. No, it wasn't. It was done for good reasons. And the land's not worth anything. So then you should have been in favor of us being able to sell it, and you could have bought it for a song. So there's a whole lot of illogic going on here when some people want to say it's not worth anything anyway, so don't worry about it. And I'm sitting there saying I'm trying to recover as much money for that property as I can on behalf of the town in order to blunt the impact of a school project on taxes. That's where I'm coming from.
I understand.
Not your, I'm barking at you, I know, and I understand you are in the middle, you don't need to be in the middle. But I want my point to be made clear to the public. I want it in the minutes for this meeting, that people have been at least blowing some part-time smoke. And we cover a lot of different topics here on the select board. I'm not a lawyer, and so one of the biggest challenges for me as a member of the select board is to see through the smoke, know when to double check things, when to be skeptical about things. And when I think I've been doing that, and it still comes out at the end, oh, no, it really is frustrating.
So Gus, I'm very much...
I've been on my soapbox long enough, and you've had to endure it.
Gus, I'm in very much the same position as you are on this. The only thing that gives me some comfort is that at the town meeting, the annual town meeting, we had a topographical map in front of us, and I was quite surprised that there was like a 25 to 30 foot elevation change on that land, which made me start to wonder if it was usable at all, to be honest, with that type of slopes. So I don't have an answer to that, but it struck me as a question that maybe we have something that's just not worth anything.
And I would have liked to have had the opportunity to let a developer tell us what they could do with it. And you're entirely right, Pete. It could be that it's not good for anything, or, I mean, I still don't understand how the Affordable Housing Trust could come up with using it for something, but
So we can't sell it, can we lease it?
No.
No.
You don't have the authority in that.
Well, if we
So
come,
the only thing we can do is build something in the town. If we want to build something, it's on behalf of.
The Affordable Housing Trust, among others, has the ability to circumvent zoning. They can do a friendly 40B.
right.
Or Habitat for
There is,
Humanity type house.
alluding to, there is actually a provision in the zoning that is little known, but I was actually on the planning board when it was inserted, which precludes land of a certain slope from being included for minimum lot size. I forget what the percentage is, maybe you recall?
It's steeper than a 3-to-1 slope. You can't count it towards zoning lot
Right.
area.
So a minimum lot area, so if you, and that was actually, that was in response to what one of our fly-by-night developers was doing at the time, but that actually inadvertently pushed Woodcliff because Scott Caldwell was gonna be impacted by that zoning change, and he rushed to get his plans in to get himself protected. So the unintended consequence was we brought all that development, trying to do a tighten up on development.
So I'll chime in here for, I agree with what's been said. I will support signing this, because at the end of the day, I do want a document like this on file. We've had a go about with some neighbors in town that couldn't find something, and it became very heated, and at the end of the day, having a covenant, to me, it matters. I'm wildly disappointed that we didn't get the easement. I actually spoke with the chair of the planning board, and we had a very calm conversation about, could they have put a delay on so we could have asked for it and put it in? Yes. But in the spirit of going forward, don't worry about it. No one's against it. It's just we want to get this through because this is how they originally submitted it. The fact that it's not playing out that way doesn't sit well with me at all. And I really like our planning board. So to think that this went down the way it went, wildly disappointing. It's considering we just had a great MBTA session and the two of us really worked well together. They know what we were asking. They know why we were asking it. From a pure safety standpoint, to come out where the easement is horrible, but that's what we're going to now use. And
Existing easement.
the existing easement now is what we're going to use. I question anyone who's living in a new home. Did they cut a few trees down to build that home? Yep. I drove by that for years. So suddenly, you can cut down trees so I can get my house, but don't touch the tree afterwards. That's the only thing that really bothered me at town meeting is, now that I've taken care of myself, screw everybody else. No, I drove by Harding for years, the last 20 some odd years, and there were beautiful trees in that area, and it is really wide open now compared to what it used to look like. So that's change. We bought the land, we knew we were gonna make some changes to it. I'm disappointed with how this has played out. You're at the podium, I can see Mike is online, so he's listening in. It changes the way we have to approach developers going forward. Not what I wanna see happen, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I understand. I really do.
Um,
And again, I just hope you can appreciate kind of the spot that we were in.
Yeah, because I think I spoke with you, or maybe it was Jim had spoken with you, that you weren't against it, and you wouldn't even mind the delay, except the fact that we would have had to put the paperwork in to get that going. So my lesson learned here is if anyone on the planning board tells me, no, Eileen, wait, I'm saying, no, don't want to wait. Like, we're not going to go with blind faith. We can trust people. Everybody's on the same page. No one's got an ulterior motive. That might have happened behind the scenes now that I'm hearing, that somebody might have said, wink, wink, we'll tell them, yes, it's going to happen, but we don't really want it to happen. So it's just unfortunate. But if you're here tonight to get us to sign, I'm not going to not sign because I think it's just the right thing to do. So if somebody comes and says, our street's got a crack in it, how come you're not plowing? It's all documented. And I would really ask that a private way road sign is up, so there's no gray area. Someone comes house hunting and they look to find the street they might buy a house on. That is what should be there on, Mo, on any private road going forward. So we never get that going.
We have those on there, on our new signs. We have all private ways on.
So I'm in favor of signing this because it protects the town, not because it does anything for the developer. I was planning on coming here and opposing it like Gus is tonight until I heard that it basically protects the town.
Yeah, it's
And
for
so
the
if it
town.
protects the town, I'm willing to sign it. I don't think, Eileen, that it'll do anything to signing the covenant to help buyers understand that they live on a private way, unfortunately, because they'll never get notice of it. 'Cause
No,
they
but
don't-
if the road sign says private way,
if we have a road sign, that'll help them. The covenant won't. But
but it's documented.
And I came here not knowing whether I was just going to be the lone dissenting voice where I was not going to vote for approval. In light of this discussion where I think there's a clear message, it's not just me that had this reaction. And in fairness, I agree with Eileen. My bigger issue is the planning board for not taking care of this thing. That doesn't let the developer off.
I'm not
the
trying
hook.
to throw the planning board
No,
under
no,
the
no,
bus.
of course you're not. You're
No,
trying to
no,
keep
no, it's just
everybody happy.
unfortunate. They know
And
why
I
we
think you're
wanted
going
it.
away.
Well, I'm
I
just
think-
trying to do my
I think you're
job.
going away knowing that the developer, in trying to keep everybody happy, did a pretty miserable job of keeping us happy. But in light of this discussion and those points, I will also vote to approve this.
the other
Because it
thing
does,
that,
it protects the
Can
town.
we just go to our town attorney?
So going forward, just for your information, I think it's very important to understand the context. Subdivision control law was probably drafted with a lot of influence from developers, but it's an as-of-right law. If a developer comes in and meets all the local subdivision rules and regulations of the planning board, they have a right to build whatever it is they're proposing to build. And the municipality, as part of that right, cannot impose unreasonable requirements. Where you get into gray area and negotiable territory is it's almost, particularly in this day and age, seldom if ever that you see an as-of-right subdivision. And therefore, that developer needs waivers from the planning board, and that then results in a give and take. And this one was not unique, this one needed waivers as well. So it could have been in play to have a negotiation.
100%.
Right.
well, and the developer apparently had no problem with it until he got a buyer, so it absolutely could have been done. It's just too bad that it wasn't.
Yep.
All right.
And I think that it's gonna be very unfortunate if if anything ever does happen with that property, because then we'll get a lot of trees cut on the right of way,
Didn't want
and that will impact
future
those
project
two
where a
neighbors on
developer
either
comes in with
side.
an as-of-right subdivision, and the boards take a position that is not legally defensible.
No, I hear what you're saying, but I sat in a couple of those meetings just to hear what the neighbors' concerns were, and there were a lot of questions about Garrison Path with different things that they had to get some variances from the planning board. And once that happens, then you open the
That's correct.
conversation to say, we'll give you this variance for, it's a trade-off.
Waiver.
Waiver, yes.
So Dan, since you're an expert on our Medfield zoning, the house that abuts our right-of-way is one of the ones, it's where the Morrises live, I think, Russell Morris. Are you familiar
To
with?
the right of the right of way?
Yes,
It's the one
to
at
the right of the
corner.
right
It's
of
the one
way.
at the corner.
Okay,
right
yeah.
at the corner.
When that house was built, it was popped up in the air about 5 or 10 feet. For whatever reason, the builder
Ledge.
decided that was a better
Sure, it was
result.
ledge, yeah.
And that is one of the things that has always bugged me about Medfield zoning, that someone could do that, and then you'd have this house that would be so much higher than their neighbor's property as it is now.
Actually, your zoning doesn't allow that anymore.
Good.
So I don't know when that house was built, but right now, your height restriction for structures goes from the average existing grade around the foundation
So you can't
or
play with the
average
existing
proposed
grade.
whichever is lower. So if the average existing grade is lower, your 35 feet starts from there. Even if you choose to build the foundation up, that means that the main body of your house
Well,
has
what
to
the-
get shorter.
What they did was they filled.
Yes. Well, I don't know exactly when that came into your zoning
So
requirement.
are you saying you can't fill anymore like they did?
You can fill, the height of the structure is relative essentially to the existing grade in a situation where you want to
Oh,
fill.
existing grade, all right, so if you increase the existing grade, you
don't
don't
get
have to
more
get to
height.
measure from the new existing
There's a
grade.
whole subdivision up off of, back road through the Dover. It was ultimately done as an open space subdivision, and it was proposed to the planning board. Again, I was on the planning board at the time, as a planned community. They came in with a whole team, architect and all, and we let our guard down. We didn't firm up the documents, and they no sooner got it approved, and instead of getting a well-planned, well-laid out, they just flipped lots, and there's houses that look like castles because they're so high up.
Okay. All right, so,
Ready?
yep, I'm
Yeah,
ready if you're
okay.
ready.
Move that we sign the private road agreement with Hillcrest Builders LLC for Garrison Path definitive subdivision.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye, aye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dan.
Thank
So
you.
I believe Maria gave you 2 originals.
Yes, we
One
have
for you
originals.
guys to keep, and then whenever you sign them, I'll come and collect the other one to record.
Okay,
Yep.
thank
It'll
you.
be ready tomorrow.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate your weathering the storm, Dan.
No problem. It's what I do for a living.
He gets it
you,
from
Dan.
his
Have
father.
a good night.
Father was one of the best rolling with the punches.
All right, so discussion items. Discuss the removal of dog waste at Medfield State Hospital, and along with her, the recognition of Mark LeBlanc. Mark's been outstanding. He's been, how many years has he been up at the state hospital helping out?
I think last 7 maybe.
Okay, I was gonna say around 10. I just bumped into someone today. So why don't we have the discussion? I don't believe Mark is here, and I don't believe he is online, but we did, and I can see if we can track him down. We do have a recognition for his dedicated service to the town of Medfield and the dog community at the Medfield State Hospital, signed by the 3 of us. So I see that there are no cans up there right now.
No, so given the condition that we had and the amount of dog waste that was on site after our last meeting, we did have a consultant, an outside contractor, come in and remove the waste on site. They were shocked at the amount of waste that was in one area. They have never had a clean out like that. And they've given us a quote for how we would move forward with that. So they're anticipating that we need 15 receptacles at the state hospital, and it's $15,000 to $20,000 a year, depending on the number of receptacles. So to start
Receptacle or per?
for the whole, all of them, all 15. So in talking to Mo, we would propose that we would start with the 15, give it a try. If you agreed to go this path, determine whether or not we needed all 15. If we reduce the number, then obviously the cost is going to go down. They provide the receptacles, they place them, and then they remove them and clean them once a week.
Did they have a location plan? Like, if you're saying 15, I don't know if that's 3 receptacles in 5 places.
Well, I think because of, they don't have any background on Medfield State Hospital. The people that came to remove the waste over the weekend were very shocked to see what was there. It was kind of tough condition, but with the amount of traffic that they saw, they do the city of Newton, and they have over 70 receptacles there. So they look at the amount of traffic that's coming through the state hospital. Granted, it was Memorial Day weekend, but they don't have any basis to go off of. So it can be negotiated still. It's just that we had to come up with a figure that, a possible figure of if we wanted to pursue that. And they felt the 2 people that came were people that had been with the company for many years, that they felt that 15 receptacles to start off with would be, to see how it panned out. It could be we could use less and they would come, once a week for less receptacles, but because of the amount of traffic, they felt that it was necessary to start with that.
The purpose behind my question is a little different than that. I was trying to get in the head of dog walkers. If you imagine that there's a receptacle every 100 yards going out into the north field and going maybe even all the way across to the other side, then dog walkers are used to just saying, wherever my dog goes, here's a barrel, as opposed to what we have right now is the receptacles are concentrated around the campus. Right. If somebody's out on a trail, there are some people who just fling the bags or they leave them neatly for our state hospital butler to come and pick them up
We saw
off
it
the
today.
trail. But there's a little more discipline around the distribution of poop when it's in the campus area itself.
Right.
So but I could see how, like the one when you're entering to go to the north field, there's 2 or 3 barrels that are there, and at the end of the weekend, they're full, so.
And we
I
don't
could-
own the bottom of the field, so
Right.
that's Dover's property. So
Right.
that's why I think we
Right.
do keep it up where we are,
Right.
so.
So I actually am thinking it would be better to have it in some concentrated areas. It could be okay out of the parking lot, but, you know, in the civilized part of the area, so people know you go out of the trail, you're responsible for cleaning up your dog.
I think they recommended the 15 based on what Mo said, where they were watching the traffic that we had for that weekend. But I think
yeah.
ultimately it's up to us. If you
Yeah.
want 5 receptacles, you want 10, it's up to us.
So,
I'm okay with starting with 15. I was just trying to get the
But
configuration.
I think
See
you
where
said if
they
you're
think
gonna,
it-
yeah, because when we last left this discussion, it was whether or not we were actually going to go this route or we were not going to provide it at all. So I think, we were trying to give you some context to make that decision.
Sure.
So I've heard you say many times over the last 2 years that we want to treat State Hospital like a national park. You take out what you take in, right? And I don't knock that at all, right? It's an education process. I would love to go that route, right? I don't know how much it's going to cost to put signs up. But I was there today, and all these people are like, oh my God, there's no trash cans, no trash cans. Like, okay, so do you just drop it? Because I feel like then I'll just drop it in somebody's front yard. If my dog dumps, I'm like, I picked it up, but there's your trash bag. So I almost feel like telling people around town, being very sarcastic, if that's what people want to do at the state hospital, just drop it, then let's just drop it in people's lawns and people will lose their mind. It's like, you don't do that, right? It's yours, you take it with you. Now, when you do walk around town, people do take it with them. If dog dumps on somebody's property on South Street they pick it up and they take it home with them. That's what we need people to be doing at the state hospital. The challenge we have is there's a lot of professional dog walkers up there, whether we like it or not. They've got, somebody told me today, so they saw somebody with 19 dogs up there. Someone else had 14. So if you've got 14 dogs and the reason you have them up there is for a walk and probably to take a good dump, that's a lot of bags. And I really question, are they putting them in their car or not? Right? So I don't know if we're even going to decide this tonight. Do we take the path of national park? Do we take the path of, if we spend $15,000 a year, let's do some quick math, if we got in and around 1,400 medallions for people to have the right to walk at the state hospital, that just pays for itself, right?
I think we already went the national park route before we ever had barrels. There's a reason barrels got introduced at the state hospital.
I never
and
saw
that
a
was-
sign. That's the only reason I say that.
Well, if people need a sign to tell them they can't just let their dog poop anywhere and walk away from it, we're at a more basic level of people.
But the national parks does that. That's the only reason I say that. Before you walk in, that's what they say.
So I only say that we didn't start with barrels.
Sure.
We started with nothing, and the only responsible group, I mean, individuals were responsible. We were responsible when we brought a dog. After you step in a few poops on the grass by the buildings, there is a karma loop there. But the only responsible group that I'm aware of that actually, because they had dogs, would show up and deliberately clean stuff was VizWiz. Mm-hmm. They used to periodically, they had the Vislas. They'd have this big meets with the Vislas, they'd use them, but they would show up on a weekend and they would clean the entire place up. That's the only organized effort that I saw from people taking responsibility. The other piece I'll say about this is if we concentrate the barrels in the civilized area, based on my reading of the one-stop permit, the grant program, the construction is going to start within 2 years. So the issue we're dealing with here is not a 30-year commitment. It's just closing the gap between the time that fences start getting put up around the campus. And when people live there like they do, you're right, people don't do that in neighborhoods because they say people live here. When people go to the campus, nobody's living here. And
Except for Belforge, and I do want to, even with the barrels up there, I mean, I had a conversation with Jean last week or the week before about the amount of dog waste she cleans up at Belforge
Even on
every
the
weekend.
Belforge front.
Even when their barrels are there, people are just letting their dogs run and go to the bathroom. And I just, people do live there. Jean's put a
Right.
lot of effort into that,
Right.
and it really breaks my heart to think that she spends a significant amount of time every week doing that, even when there were barrels provided. So, but I want to make it clear, these are barrels for dog waste. This is not for trash.
Correct.
And we
So-
have trash. You saw the piles up there. the
Yeah, and we're
Starbucks
not
cups,
putting
Dunkin'
trash containers up there for us to empty.
But unfortunately, people will use it as a trash
Oh,
receptacle.
definitely gonna. If there's something up there, the people, if they've got their Starbucks mug and their green bag, they're both going in, whatever that receptacle is.
That's a place where I think you put signs up on the barrels and say dog waste only. And that, I mean, and then if it turns into a problem, then we'll deal with it. But that's a place I do think you put a sign, because people see a barrel, they don't automatically know, oh, this is only dog waste, because.
But these will be marked. These are from the
Yes.
company. They're
Right.
clearly
Okay,
Duty calls.
duty.
DOODY.
that might be too subtle.
Well,
Okay. Maybe we cross that bridge around trash. If there's abuse of the barrels, then we can cross that bridge, but.
what do the barrels look like that would prevent somebody from taking a Dunkin' Donuts cup and just tossing it in there?
I don't know.
Is it circular with the bag?
It's probably circular with a bag, yeah. But it's clearly marked for pet waste.
You better have the barrels smell really like pet waste. They only go
Now
there
I'm
if they have
stopping.
to go there.
No.
They do it for multiple cities and towns, so but it's more of a trial and error for us to see what's needed up there
Well, and how quick would they get underway if we voted
as
tonight?
soon as possible.
Rough idea, Christine?
I think we would have them up there probably by next weekend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I say we got to do something versus nothing right now.
Yeah, I think
And then as, you know, if the Attorney General approves our bylaw changes, there's going to be communication up there anyways, and that's another way to start the communication as to where we may be
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So it'd start with 15 barrels?
Do we need 15? That's what I think I'd need to look at a map and figure out where they are today.
Well, if you start with 15 and it's too many, you're gonna wind up with barrels that aren't full. If you start with 8 and it's not enough, you're gonna be
Okay.
right back with piles of poop on the side of the barrel. So it wouldn't be the end of the world for us to go for a month and see if,
Okay.
gosh, they're only using half the barrels. So I don't
Like I
think
say, there's
that's
a
what's
trial and
happening.
error type of thing up there because we're not really sure
Yeah.
what the use is going to be for the particular containers.
How frequently do they get empty?
Once a week.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, we could have them come every day if you wanted to, but then the cost goes up.
Nope.
I guess I come at this from not being happy about this, like the last Garrison Path discussion. The idea that the town has to go around cleaning up after people's dogs, picking up people's dogs' poops because they won't pick it up themselves that's just astonishing to me.
And it's not everyone. It's
not
you know.
a regular municipal service. Apparently Newton's doing it, so maybe it's the future.
They're charging medallions too, though, so I guarantee you, the people that are paying 50, 75, 150, 550 are paying for that pickup, which is why I dog club.
I'd be in favor of us getting whether we try it first to see how it works and then go to that, because then you're gonna have to adjust a little bit when the construction project starts. But I'm all for doing that, to make that a self-funded, whatever it takes, that drives the
It's
medallion
self-funded.
price. Yeah.
Yeah, that would appeal to me too, if the users were paying the fees that we need to.
And my
pick up
guess is
to-
if people had to put money down for each dog, you wouldn't have a lot of people showing up with 19 dogs, for one thing.
Can't-
And the people, if they know they're paying for the services to keep the place clean, I think that would actually have a reinforcing loop that says, therefore, I'm gonna be more responsible with my dog, because I don't really wanna have to see the rates on this thing go up.
So is any part of this someone walking around the grounds picking up the dog poop that Gene
So we-
Minio is picking up at
We
this
can
point?
have them.
That's
we
another
can have
fee.
them go around the area to.
That's not part of the 15,000.
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
But they do provide that service. They do it
Yeah.
for homes. They do it for different areas. But we don't. We're hoping that's not the case, that we have to go around to do that.
Let's not
Well,
touch
it-
that.
That's for the lazy homeowner that
Right.
has all around their house and they don't want to clean it, so they come in and do that
Right.
service.
But based on our anecdotal reports from Gene Minio, she's already doing that, and so that service is
Well,
already
I think
taking place.
the barrels were extremely full, and there was no really place to put it. So hopefully, with things strategically put out there, it might not complete the whole set, but it probably would help a lot.
The other thing that would help there is if we find a way to be more firm about dogs have to be on leash inside the quad, because those dogs that are if they're pooping around the chapel, those are dogs off leash that are just pooping and people aren't
We
trying.
were up there today for a little over an hour. There wasn't a single dog on a leash in the quad.
Right, you're right, that's the way it is all the time.
Because we've got some small signs, not all of which point in the right direction, and it's basically, everybody knows it's not enforced. And that problem goes away also when the project starts, so, you know.
And I think, right, if we see, listen, I know I'll say it, if I see somebody up there and they don't pick up, I'll be like, hey, time out. Town's paying for that. Put it in there, or you won't be bringing a dog up here anymore, right? I mean, it's a privilege, not a right. If we're now gonna cough up $15,000 to put receptacles versus this gentleman, Mark, God bless him, for the last 8-10 years has been doing it out of his own pocket, we're now saying, okay, we're going to take on the responsibility because it is our land. People are gonna use that, or they're gonna be very absolutely nice not to go up there anymore.
There's one other thought that crossed my mind this last week. It was actually, I was looking at the map of the site and recognized we own up to the telephone poles. I'm wondering whether it may be the dog control bylaw committee or representative, whether somebody shouldn't reach out to Dover. Because we're making decisions at the state hospital that have an impact going all the way past the North Field, all the way onto Dover's. I mean, they have their own issues because some people come in from that side, but we're probably a far bigger feeder of dogs, that are
Going to
going off
Dover.
into the Dover paths. Generally, it's not too bad over there, so it seems like people are, for whatever reason, once they get far enough out, there's no barrels. But I'm wondering whether at some point we actually should reach out to Dover and just, as a neighbor, a neighboring town, out of courtesy, to just have a conversation.
So we have Jimmy, based on that, 'cause I know Jill's on here. So Jill's comment was, we need more animal control presence. And then we have Chris Potts saying, would the company allow the town to sell advertising on the barrels to help defray the cost? Maybe participate in cost share, just trying to be creative. And then, sorry, meant to write profit share, not cost share. But something to think about, right?
Something we can ask them. One thing I would definitely talk to you about is preparing for the future, because once the state hospital closes, if there's not many other locations for dog walkers to go, it's going to be a little out of control. I feel, especially near the wells. Right now, down by the Wheelock, we have a couple of very sensitive wells there. We did have an E. coli hit last year that we don't know what it was caused from, but there are a lot of dog walkers there now. But once the state hospital closes, there are going to be areas of town land that we'd have to kind of be careful of.
Okay.
Well, there is another issue. We're talking about on-leash, off-leash areas relative to dog control. We probably also should be looking at dogs allowed, dogs not allowed areas relative to our
We did put that as
well
a,
fields.
when the dog
Makes sense.
bylaw committee was together, I did put a comment in there about the wells down in that location. So I don't know what they really could do at the time, but it is a sensitive area, and it is an area where dogs can get to.
See, the thing is, before we ever bought the property, we've lived here for 25 years, and we would bring our dogs over there.
Bill.
But it wasn't the mecca of dog
Bob,
walking.
sorry, Bob.
It's kind of weird. It wasn't even that when we first bought the property. It was that somewhere in the last maybe 5-6 years, suddenly word got out, and I think COVID maybe pushed it because a lot of people just wanted to get outside, and we were one of the few places that stayed open. Trustees, they closed their reservations.
Well, and then when they started filming movies up there, I mean, it's a good
Yep.
thing, but that got a lot of press. When they did
Yep.
Shelter Island, people were like, oh, let's go check it out. And you get up there and you go, oh my God, this is a beautiful place.
Right.
So between various movies being shot there, COVID being shot there, and doesn't have the creepy
Right.
feeling that it had when it originally shut down. People who lived here didn't go up there very often.
Right.
When it first shut down, no one went up there. And now you're 20 years removed, and it's just a beautiful piece of open space.
Right.
All right, so I think something that you made me just think of here, and I'll talk to Jill about it, is, Mo, potentially to look at making sure dogs are on leash if we have well areas, and that's the sign. Dog must be on leash, water treatment, water areas, whatever the phrase would be. So it gives someone walking by the ability to say, hey, dog on leash, this is the town water area,
Right.
You
That's
might
the
even
whole
have to
area, but-
Consider no dogs in a particular area.
We do have a zone of influence that comes into our wells that we pump from this the any area.
Cemetery commissioners and Park and Rec both have no dog policies. And we've taken action to give them authority to ticket.
So that whole area behind Wheelock is really the well area, and that's one of the major dog walking areas in town, unfortunately.
With the, what do they call it, Helmquist,
Holmquist.
Holmquist.
So is that, so that walking area right there, that if we keep that off leash, is that area impacting the wells that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So if we start getting too restrictive, then I think we also have to find a place that we can tell dog
alternate
walkers they can
locations,
go. So that's the other piece, but I'm thinking.
Northfield and Dover? I'm sorry, what?
There was a sign at one point where Dover had a thing, and the dogs, I think, had to be on leashes, and that kind of got ignored. So they're not having any better luck with enforcement of rules than we are. When the hospital is developed, I find myself wondering, will the same flow of dogs go north of Hospital Road, or will they shift south of Hospital Road? Just because, it's a little hard to park in somebody's driveway or their parking area, walk by their house, and then there'll still be people walking undoubtedly, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a shift in the emphasis to go south of Hospital Road.
A lot of cities and towns, they create dog parks. They have controlled areas, but I think people are used to the wide open spaces now, so it's hard to change behaviors.
Plus, the dog parks have the same. They have their own problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and there's been enough of a socialization that there's real groups of people that meet at the Medfield State Hospital now and walk their dogs together.
Yeah,
So,
Bruni as a puppy, I used to do that. There were 6, 7, 8 ladies. You just got 9 o'clock, 11:30, 1. You knew who you were going to see. It just
Yep.
became a pattern.
Yeah.
And it's good for the dog. The reason my dog doesn't run is for years he walked in a pack. And as the puppy, he watched all the other dogs didn't run, so he never felt the need to run. And he's now the older dog, and some of the puppies notice that he just doesn't have any reason to stray.
Well, like
but
you said, though, there's a lot of responsible dog owners. It's just, the select few that if you can change their behaviors, it'll work for everyone.
Okay.
Jill's comment, the only thing I would say about when we say we need more animal control officer presence there, I'm assuming the animal control officer is busy doing animal control officer stuff in the town. So as soon as you start saying, oh, we need to increase presence on somebody patrolling, that's another cost beyond the barrels. So and this all ties into, if you're going to have some sort of registration or medallion system and you're going to price it, you're going to want to price it to cover the costs. And we're going to need to be thoughtful about what costs we build into that budget that's going to have to be covered. And my guess is that the higher up that goes, the problem starts to diminish, because not everybody's going to want to buy the medallion because they only go a couple times a year. So maybe it also helps squelch the problem just a little bit.
So just to take it fair, that by our bylaw, a police officer or a dog control officer. So it's asking the chief to disperse people to go up there. So it's not just Jenny.
Right.
It's any police officer, and just to make the presence.
But the issue, and this is a question for the Chief Garrett, at the point, we also have people who are saying you need to have more police effort on traffic enforcement.
Sure.
And you need to be more present downtown. So the good news is people want to see the police involved in more things, but in the grand scheme of priorities, I'm not sure that poop patrol would be very high on my priority list
It's not
for
poop patrol.
assigning an officer.
It's really the leash, right? So you just made a comment
Well,
about the
you-
quad, right? The quad. It's the concern is people need to have their dogs on leash, right? We've got 2 police officers now. I think 6 are trained to be on the e-bikes. Great area for them because you're not getting in a car. You can zip across. So it's a matter of either we make an effort and we start to send the signal that things are changing, or we just do it sporadically. And when you do something sporadically, you never create a pattern and you never break the bad pattern that exists.
Fair enough. There may be a way to do that, because I think the word's gotten out with people that toward dusk, there's always a cruiser up there, or 2. I think there's actually usually 2, and people have sort of figured out the regular users of the hospital that don't necessarily make sure they exit promptly at the end of the day because they just don't want to. It's harder for people to hang around past sundown because the police will boot you out. So it's not like you have to be there all day. It's just there's certain maybe strategic times. So that's fair.
So I'll share with you guys that on Friday night, I biked up to the hospital and I bumped into Jenny Shaw Cronin sitting in the animal control officer vehicle. And after chit-chatting about other stuff, I asked her why she was there, and she said that the chief had just asked her to do her paperwork there to increase her visibility on the site, and that's literally what she was doing at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday night. She was sitting there doing her paperwork.
That's good.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
no, I was very happy to see her there.
All right, so
I
shall
like
we?
Jenny.
Oh, yeah, she's awesome. All right, so do we want to vote on signing a contract with,
So they're gonna bill us on a weekly basis.
okay,
So I think we just go vote to authorize Mo and I to work with them and get them up there ASAP.
okay.
So I move that we authorize Christine and Mo to go ahead and open up a relationship with, what's the company?
Duty calls.
Duty calls.
Duty, 2 Ds, 2 Os, Duty Calls, 2
It's
Ls.
on my resume.
Yeah. To basically open up, putting up, I think we said 15
Receptacles.
receptacles to start with.
Cost of 15, not to go over 15,000 or
Not
around
to,
there?
not to exceed $15,000.
Well, I would let's say
For a
say
year.
20.
Okay.
Because that was our initial quote. We're gonna do some negotiating with
Okay.
them, but just so we can.
Okay,
So not to
Get moving.
exceed 20,000 for the year. And
Second?
all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All right,
thanks, Mo.
thank you.
Thanks, Mo.
All right.
You were almost first. Almost.
See, hey, Mo, see, if you come in without a written contract, it goes a lot easier.
You're welcome.
All right, action items. Vote to award the Southeast Regional Service.
We're going to do Mark LeBlanc.
Well, I had read it before, he's not here, so,
Well,
So-
well, then let me just, I
Oh,
just
yeah,
want to
sorry,
say,
okay.
I
Oh,
don't
sorry,
know
sorry,
Mark
sorry.
well, and I wish he was here.
yes.
And there are people who use the hospital a lot who know him better because he does communicate and they see him. You know, if there's a micro dirty jobs guy in Medfield, it's got to be what Mark has done. And I just, you know, at least certainly personally, I suspect
yeah,
all of
no,
us
thank you.
feel the same way. We've kind of not acknowledged him, not had much to do with him. He's just been there. Anything I've ever seen him communicate to the public has been humble and polite and respectful. And he, in light of this discussion we just had about a contract, you can get some sense of the value that he's provided to the town as a volunteer over, if it's 6 or 7 years, do the math. And it's, you know, we're at a point now where it seems like we should take on more of the direct responsibility, but certainly I personally very much appreciate what he's done. Recognize that I don't think we've been publicly vocal about that, and I haven't been personally demonstrative with him about the job he's done, but he's probably, of all the volunteers in Medfield, and there are a lot of them, who take on hard jobs, I suspect Mark has taken on the absolute dirtiest, thankless, most unpleasant job as a volunteer for a number of years. And
He doesn't even live in Medfield, right?
I don't think
He
he's
does
a
not live in
resident.
Medfield, and I think when Mark took this on, we didn't have the number of users at the hospital that we do now.
so maybe he got sucked into more than he knew what he was
Grew
signing
on
up
him.
for.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just wanted to personally thank him and recognize that, and at least we can
And
get him a
we'll
certificate
get
of
him the
appreciation.
certificate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why he should not take that we're moving on as anything negative other
No.
than, it's just people were starting to say negative things about the barrels, and here's a guy trying to do us a favor, and it's like, you know what, it's time for us to take it on and thank him for everything he's done.
Right.
And I think he carved out this niche role that he played on his own. He basically
Yeah.
made it up and has been running it on his own for all these years, so.
I think he worked with John Thompson, so I think this is a John Thompson initiative when they were looking at the dog control options 8-10 years ago. So, all right, so you'll find a way to get this to him.
We'll get that to him. Great.
We'll tape it to a bin up at the hospital.
And, all right, so now we'll move to action items. Vote to award the Southeast Regional Service Group paper contract for FY 2025 to WB Mason Comp. Inc. and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract. Anybody have any questions?
You know, this is one of your few contracts, Chris, that I know anything about because I buy a lot of paper. And you guys are getting a good price on paper, so.
We're getting a very
I
good
was
deal.
just surprised you didn't need any three-hole punch stuff, but that's just the general.
We get a
idea.
better rate on that elsewhere.
Okay. Okay, ready?
Yep.
I move that we award the SCRSG paper contract for FY 2025 to WB Mason Company, Inc., and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, vote to sign the Underutilized Properties Program Grant contract with the state for the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment.
So this was not in your packet because we were still waiting for the state to send back their standard contract form, the form that we all hate. You've already accepted the grant. It's $500,000. This is the grant for the remediation at the state hospital. So I'm going to ask, it has to be signed by June 7th. So I'm going to ask that you authorize me to sign the contract when it comes in. I'm working with Amanda at Trinity and with April Anderson to find out what the holdup is with the state and why they can't send us out the contract. But we've already accepted the grant. It's just actually signing the contract.
Okay.
So, Christine, the letter that was in our packet, what is that for?
That is for the next round of Housing Works. That's for the one-stop application.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, I had it for the, okay. The only
Yeah.
reason I'm asking is that letter, all three of us sign it, but it was written in first person singular. So it should be we and our on the first
Change that.
page, and I think there's a we on the second page.
I think Amanda's on our call, so I'm sure she'll have a revised edition before this meeting is over.
Okay. So then we're voting so I move that we authorize Christine to sign the Underutilized Properties Program Grant contract with the state for the Medfield State Hospital redevelopment.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, vote to approve the 3-year agreement with Google Inc. for a Google Enterprise license for a total of $70,339 per year.
So this is a decrease from what our current Google account has been. Brittany and Frank have been working with Google on reducing this, and this brings our current contract from $82,656 down to $70,339. And for those that are wondering why we don't have free Google emails, those are free personal emails and don't allow any administrative control. Obviously, when we have Google Enterprise, that sets up as more a business account for us. We have complete administrative control. And you'll be part of our transition to Google Meets for our meetings going in the future. We will phase out Zoom after this last year of ARPA funding. So we're going to make that transition.
So Chris, this is mainly email?
This is email and all of our applications. We do all of our
Google Docs
storage.
and-
Yep.
Okay.
And so we are required, even after somebody leaves the employment for the town, we have to save that email account for 7 years. So this includes all of our storage as well.
Good.
Does that, when you say Google applications, is that also, what is it, Google Suite?
It's Google
So
Suite.
it's Google Doc. So what is in Google? I know Google Docs is in it. There's a
We have
spreadsheet.
Google Sheets, Google Docs, which you can get in the free version.
Yep.
This allows us unlimited storage. It also includes Google Meets, Google Calendar, Google Hangout, Google Drive, which we use. Slides. So it's a larger package than you get on the free version.
And does it, there's no implications, I'm thinking, so I've got Office. There's no implications for any of us that might not be on the full Google Suite, what we should do things in or anything like that?
No.
No, we would like you to all transition to your Google accounts, but we're working on that.
So technically,
Gmail. We're working on it.
So is emurphy@medfield.net, that's on the.
That is on this Google account. So,
Every time I
so
sign
when
in,
you
I
have
have that.
Google Enterprise, it also allows you to use your own domain name for your emails.
Okay.
So, but when you sign into that, that is a Google account.
So interestingly, at the Norfolk County Advisory Board meeting last week, they announced that they wanted all the advisory board members, they're gonna have all their own Gmail addresses for the Norfolk County Advisory Board. And the guy who was sitting next to me from, I forget where, it might have been Weymouth, he said, the question was, do any of you object to doing it? And he said, listen, I object to doing it. I already have 3 different email inboxes. The last thing I need is yet another one. And they said, oh, you can just forward all your email to this. And it's like, so I'm sitting here saying, well, okay, I already opened up one town email, so I now have a total of 4 email inboxes. And unfortunately, the scheme of having people only using the right email for the right purpose, what I really have is 3 main boxes that people use on a completely random basis. So I'll know I get an email from somebody, and then it takes me 5 minutes to find it because I have to go slogging through 3 different inboxes because I'll remember I saw it from my phone, and then when I look for it from my desk, it's like, I know it's in here somewhere. Oh, maybe it was text. And so the opportunity to have yet another email inbox is incredibly exciting to me.
I'm sure it is. This change, besides being a reduction in cost, you won't see any change to anything. It's just the exact same service we have now. We're just able to get a better price.
What are archive use licenses as opposed to the just Business Plus?
So the archive user licenses, once you end your employment with us, we take you off full-time status. So you no longer have access, obviously, to any of the Google, and then it's just an archived email address. So we only would use it for search for a public records request or informational.
Yeah.
And those are 7 years.
That's $58 a year?
Yeah, and it's 7 years we have to keep them.
That's the Secretary of State.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah, and actually it's $48 a year or the 20% discount, so that's okay. Sure. Let's see. I move that we approve the 3-year agreement with Google Inc. for a Google Enterprise license for a total of $70,339 per year.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, vote to approve one-stop application for Medfield State Hospital. Vote to sign the letter of support for the one-stop grant application for Medfield State Hospital.
And I have Amanda from Trinity is here if you have any questions specifically about the grant application.
I already asked mine. There was some confusion with
Yeah.
how the pages were done, but then before I came to this meeting, I reopened it and I saw what
Yeah.
they did.
And we apologize for that. This has been a frustration for all of our grants, is that the state now makes you fill them out on web-based versions that are not, they're not user-friendly, nor can you print them to review them at any time. It's very frustrating.
I don't know if you picked up on page 6, from page 55 to like 51 to 65 or something.
Yeah, they're all blank.
They just dropped in a chart and blank pages, and I was like,
Yeah,
okay, where the heck is
super
this?
frustrating.
I figured that all out. So I have if Amanda's on, I can run
Amanda's on.
through
Yep, let me,
the questions I had, and I'll apologize because I should have, if I'd been more organized, I would have somehow or another figured out this to get it to you sooner and not tie up a meeting. But I'll go through they're just questions. I'm just looking for
No,
where
I think
it
it's not in
starts.
the packet. I think it was separate.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
we
sent it separately
because I was
Yeah.
just trying to, like,
No,
find
you're
something
absolutely
in
right.
it
And
was
I have
so
up.
large, we
I have
sent
it up.
it.
No, I have it up. Thank you. So on page 3, I will go as fast as I can on these. I
Amanda,
was
you're
just
on?
curious.
There's Amanda. Just so you-
So on page 3, my question, at the bottom in that table, there's something called the Municipal Digital Equity Planning
Yes.
Program, and it said yes, and I had no idea what that meant.
Hold on, oh, did I bring that in? I looked it up for you. Hold on.
Find that. Where is that?
The digital equity is, the grant application actually closed for that in April of 2024,
Okay.
but it is providing broadband to your citizens who do not have broadband. We're interested in it, but we already have broadband in town, so it has
That's what
no
I was
impact on
guessing it
us.
was. I
Yeah.
said, do we really have anybody
Yep.
that need that? Okay. Next on page 4, paragraph 2.3, this is just a comment. It talks about the purposes, short project description, abstract. It talked about project will provide much needed housing, public open space, amenities, and municipal tax benefit. It occurred to me that we might want to call it historic tax benefits. Historic preservation benefits as well. Just an editorial comment. You could take it or leave it. On page 6, this will speed up later. I didn't go through all this. On paragraph 2.6, it says that we do this to get affordable housing and to comply with the spirit of the MBTA Communities Act. and I didn't really know what that actually, what we were trying to say there. It seemed to me like we probably don't want to, in other words, that's not anything that we're using to comply with the MBTA Communities Act. My instinct was, so don't make it sound like it does, and just get that out of there. But again, take it or leave it. That's an editorial comment. Go down to page 13.
Oh, hold on, Amanda, we can't hear you. Hold on one sec. It's on our end. Hold on. Okay, now try.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So the language around the MBTA Communities Act in there, while the hospital does not comply, when we met with Secretary Gus's office, they made it clear that they're really watching the communities that are passing the act and the communities that are not. And so we wanted to speak to all of Medfield's accomplishments, and especially being one of the communities that successfully passed the act this year.
Okay. Got it. On page 13, page 13, paragraph 2.3, we say that the project is vulnerable to riverine flooding. And I said, this project is on a hill, and at the bottom of the hill is a major flood plain designed to store floodwaters. So just as a factual matter, it didn't seem to me the project itself was in danger of riverine flooding. We'd be in far worse shape if we get to the point where the hospital is flooding. We're all swimming. So I just thought that was strange.
One of the town documents has said that all along, and I've been challenging it for about 5 years.
Okay.
Are you talking about 230A?
Yeah, 230. Let's see. Did I mark anything down? Give me a second, Amanda. There's a place. No. Yeah, 230A. That is what I'm talking about. And Amanda, I can send this. I highlighted all of these things, so if you keep track of what I had, I can send you my marked up version of the original. If you just want to, if that's helpful as a reference. I'm not arguing. These are all questions I had or editorial comments that you can take and leave. But if it helps to see the things I highlighted, I can get that to you if you'd like.
None of the Trinity project.
Absolutely. On this one, it's that the RMAT tool is kind of an input-based tool that the state uses.
Yep.
And so the output, this high risk of flooding, is based on the tool, and it's kind of prescriptive.
Okay. It kind of doesn't make sense, but I understand tools that are designed to do things that somebody wants them to do. Go down to page 15, paragraph 5.21. I wanted to be clear on this. It says the project will create much needed housing and open space for the region, with over 60% of the Medfield State Hospital campus being preserved as public open space. I wanted precision on what we were saying there, because if we're saying that the hospital campus, the 48 acres that Trinity is redeveloping, that 60% of that is being kept open, that's a little different than designating that 60% of the state hospital property that we own has been legally designated as open space. We intend to preserve it as open space, but we have not designated any of it as open space. I forget whether...
Especially because the Arboretum.
Yeah, because what would happen is if we ever wanted to do something on any of that property, if it's already been made open space, you got a whole lot of hoops to jump through to take it out of open space. So we kept it and said we want to preserve it as open space, but we didn't legally give it that status. That was confusing when it said over 60% is open space. So was that just the site that Trinity's working on? You're saying we're keeping 60% open?
Josh, I'm going to follow up on that one and
Okay.
get back to Christine with updated.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not misrepresenting a legal point. Qualitatively, I think you could say absolutely what you're doing is going to be I'd be surprised if it's even just 60% open. I just want to make sure I knew what we were talking about there. On page 17, paragraph 5.38, my question on 5.38 is that answer correct? Additional private development, is the infrastructure project associated with any additional private development? We mark no. Does Belforge constitute private development.
It's a good call. It's a good catch.
So it's a question, you can figure that one out. Page 18, paragraph 6.2.E. That one, I said, is this answer correct? And the reason I was asking it is it says, have zoning that allows for accessory dwelling units by right, or have a pattern of approving ADUs over the last 5 years. I guess you're okay. I read the first part about zoning, and we don't have zoning by right. But I guess you're saying no, but we do have a pattern of approving them, and that table, I think, demonstrated that. Never mind. So disregard that one. I was reacting to the zoning requirement, not the pattern. Same thing on page 21, paragraph 9.1. Is that answer correct? Let me get there. 9.1, if the applicant is a public entity, does the submission of this application require a formal vote of any board or other local entity? The answer was no, and I'm sitting there saying, well, why are we voting on it? So is it that it doesn't require, you guys are just being nice, or does it require a select board approval? Or you can figure out the answer to that, but right now I read it and said, well, why is it on our agenda if we don't need to approve it? And it's not just here as an information item. Then on page, no, all the rest of the stuff had to do with those blank pages. I knew that I figured out that the ADU list, what it was, and then we got the correct one. So those are my comments. I'm more than happy to send this thing to you. Obviously, there's not a lot of stuff marked up, but if it's helpful, I can forward that. And that's it.
Thanks so much, guys.
Okay.
Thank you for your comments.
Yep. All right.
So do we go ahead and vote on this?
I'm happy to vote on all
Yeah,
of these.
vote to authorize me to submit it.
Okay. Let's see. So I move that we authorize Christine to submit the approved one-stop application for Medfield State Hospital.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye.
So that's approved. And then the separate one is the letter. The A, 7A. What I can do on this, you pass that to Christine. Those are the stuff that's highlighted or the typos. So,
I'll get that off to you.
okay, there's only 3 of them.
Yep,
And I think I got it right. So,
change that.
move that we sign the letter of support for the one-stop grant application for MSH.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
All right.
so, there we go.
Moving on to citizens' comment. Do we have citizens' comment?
I don't have any registered, no.
Okay. Consent agenda? Nothing? Meeting minutes? We don't have any meeting minutes to approve right now, right?
I don't believe so right now.
Okay. Town administrator updates.
Let's see, just a couple of things. Just a reminder, the town will officially celebrate its birthday or incorporation on June 2nd. We will be 373 years old. And then I just really want to thank Michelle Doucette and everyone on the Memorial Day Committee. Just a fantastic event yesterday, and attending that always makes me not only so proud of all the people that live here, it's just really what makes our town so special, and it's just a great day to be a part of. So I really appreciate all the work that goes into that. I know it's a lot of moving pieces, quite literally, so I appreciate all their work. And that's it for this evening.
All right.
I would second Christine's comments about Memorial Day. It really was a very wonderful event. Lee Treadwell delivered a nice speech. The young woman who did the Gettysburg Address was great, and I thought the woman who sang the national anthem was just very spectacular. I liked her a lot. And just the pace of the day, I think there's sort of a solemnity about it, but there's also a casualness about it. It works very well. It feels good. So, and I think that, I don't know if this was the first year that Michelle had run it, but she certainly did an excellent job, Michelle Doucette, of doing it. I had sent an email to our state senator, Becca Roush, about the fact that Mark Sorrell had told us that we can't get the courts to enforce our bylaw violations, and asked her if she wouldn't look at that once she finishes her budget to come up with some sort of tweak to the system that would allow us to lien the properties of people in town that get fines for various things. I had a conversation actually with that about the Jenny Shaw Cronin up at the hospital when I bumped into her, and for some reason she said that Rentham District Court has no problem enforcing town bylaws. I don't know how she knew that. I didn't ask her that, but she cited a couple towns that have no problems in Rentham District Court. That it's on,
Question how busy the court is and what else
Yeah.
they have to do. Let magistrates handle it.
so I think what we need to do is we need to move to the jurisdiction of the Rentham District Court and get out of from under Dedham, apparently.
You don't wanna go to jail right now.
But I asked her if she could work on legislation that would help the town.
It's a very simple fix, so.
Add it as a lien against
Right.
property
Just
taxes, so
adding-
that we don't have any
adding that to
enforcement
that.
issues.
The lien statute, which is on the books, which the town has adopted, has a bylaw, but it doesn't presently include, fines.
Years ago, I know that we had a lot of discussions as a select board about Jenny Shaw Cronin having to spend a lot of time collecting on the dog licenses fees. And she mentioned that again, that you know, there are a number of scofflaws in town that just never pay the dog license fee. And how much of her time do we want her to spend chasing down the few scofflaws or I think she said it was like 100 or more. But, so that's it.
I echo Christine's and Pete's compliments about yesterday's parade, but I'll add a shout out to the people who show up for the parade. We always have a parade with a moving, you know, the people in the parade march the route, the people watching the parade march the route, and I always get a kick out of the fact you see faces 2-3 times over the course of any of our parades at all the different
Surprises me at
locations.
times because they beat us to.
Yeah, and in some
They
ways,
take
given
shortcuts.
yeah, well, they do take shortcuts, but and the other thing is the nature of the Memorial Day parade. There's multiple ceremonies. It's not just a parade and then you get somewhere. So the fact that people take the time to go to all the locations where there's things that are held is nice. But when we talk about marchers in the parade, I think you have to identify the public as well. Last week on the 15th, I had the Norfolk County Advisory Board meeting that was primarily focused on budgets. I think I mentioned in our maybe in our last meeting that, or maybe not, they had a little bit of a tiff between the Norfolk County Agricultural High School and all the other departments because the high school wanted to give a higher cost of living allowance to the high school. One part of that was sort of tied into negotiations with the teachers, but then you had all the other people. So it gets awkward when one part of a government entity treats its people one way and then the other part treats it differently, and it was just a cross thread that it's just, you don't want to go there if you can avoid it. The American Legion, just mentioned last Tuesday, the American Legion ceremony, the unveiling the plaque of the Gold Star family of the people lost their lives from Medfield who had going back to the Revolution. And it was nice to see that turnout. It was a nice day, and again, a shout out to Aura for the wonderful meeting room that they've made available to the Legion, and they're the ones, the two developers are the ones who actually paid for the plaque. So not only have they done a nice job with their project, but they've also demonstrated a commitment to the town and the Legion that's worth noting. On the 23rd, Good Energy had an information session. The Department of Public Utilities has been coming under heat for the long time that it takes to approve community choice aggregation programs. So we waited more than a year from the time we submitted our community choice aggregation program to actually get the approval, which we now have. to the DPU's credit, at least they got the flack, and they initiated a process of discussing things, and they've made some things easier. It's easier for you to make some minor changes without having to go through the full drill. I won't go into the details, but basically a lot of things that were bogging the DPU down in reviewing plan changes that probably the DPU didn't want to be involved in anyway. They managed to loosen the rules up for communities that have aggregation programs. They were kind of treating communities with aggregation programs like any other electricity supplier. And that was where the problem came in. So, but they've moved off of that, and now I think they're targeting having, I don't know if I wrote it down, they have, instead of the 365 plus days it took us to get ours done, they're shooting for a 120-day turnaround for new plans. So that's what, something 4 months rather than a year plus. And that is it. That's it.
All right, the only thing I did skip here before I jumped in is the next meeting dates are posted here in our minutes. I don't think I need to read through them. The dates haven't changed since our last meeting. But I too very much appreciate the attendance for yesterday's Memorial Day Parade, between police, fire, the band, all the different volunteers. It was a nice turnout. I'm glad it didn't rain on our parade. To have to go into the cafeteria would have been such a bummer. And again, as you said, Pete, the young woman that sang, the young woman that read the Gettysburg Address, Lee Treadwell's speech was fabulous. Really, you sit and listen. It was very thoughtful in what he was really communicating. So super nice. I too attended the Gold Star Families tribute at Aura. The plaque that both Ed and Bill presented and have posted in that room is beautiful. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's worth going by and checking it out. And then when you read it and you start to see the names, the town has done a nice job over the years getting those names out in different parts of town, whether it's a street, whether it's a park, whether it's the Hinckley Park and all the different areas around town. It's super nice.
Chevery room.
Right, exactly.
I hadn't gone in and out through the door at Aura that leads into that Beckwith room, and that patio there is really nice.
Oh, it's a nice building. Have you been to the front where it looks like you're going into the
Yes,
Mary?
yeah.
I mean,
But that's where I'd gone before, and this time I went in directly into that, because that's why they told us they wanted us to come.
yeah, the
but
community room is nice.
And the deck is nice for those residents.
Right, they've got you can turn the stereo on and have music playing if you're hanging out there. And then earlier in the month, I went to the Affordable Housing Trust meeting. We talked about Newton had some updates because, as I think I've said a few times, they're asking Trinity to set aside 9 units. So that is not, we haven't got a no, which is a good thing. We're still moving through with that. Kerry wasn't able to make it, but we know that we have a piece of property that we're exploring for habitat. So that's moving along. We didn't get any update on Medfield Housing Authority. I think a couple of meetings have been canceled, so there's no update as to what's happening with Rose Bay. Tomorrow, I'm going to come here at 11 a.m. The Medfield School Building Committee is holding their third out of 4 forums. They'll be up here. And, a lot of reasons why they've done Sunday afternoon, they've done a weeknight, now they're going to do a weekday, and then their 4th one will be this Friday at the center at 11 a.m. as well. So Council on Aging.
So you're planning to go tomorrow?
Yeah, my game plan is to be here at 11.
So I'll try to I wanted to catch one of them. I'll try to get the Friday one just to.
Yeah, I've missed the, I thought it was going to be tomorrow night and I wasn't going to be able to make it, but 11 tomorrow I can do. And I, like you, did you sit in the first one, Pete?
I went to the first one. There were probably 5 of us that attended, unfortunately, so that the last time we were trying to build a school, people complained about not having known what was going on in time. The same sort of meetings were happening then. No one's attending the meetings.
Well, but I think what they're saying in the paper, if you're reading it, is they're asking for input as they look at locations. We heard the chair of the school building committee acknowledge that didn't actually play out last time. That there wasn't as and this is Mike saying this at a meeting. So I think what they're all trying to do right now is make sure they flush it out. To your point, if it's not well attended, at least they can claim that they've done 4 of these as they move forward. It is imperative, if we're going to get accepted into MSBA, that we, as a town, look unified, and they have their backs up against the wall, 'cause it's gotta happen in September, because the decision's gonna come October, November, right? So I think what they're trying to do, flushing out as many questions, giving people the opportunity to meet and ask questions, and I think they've been great. So I look forward to sitting in tomorrow's, but I know the committee itself is not turning a deaf ear.
It's a very impressive group of people that have stepped forward to work on it. I was pleasantly surprised that so many highly qualified people agreed to work on it, given how badly the last committee was treated.
Well, think about it. We all saw the applications, right? There really were. There were more people that we would have liked to put on there, in the sense that there were that many qualified individuals.
Carolyn Casey did the presentation that I heard, and she was just excellent at presenting.
And then my last one here. Oh yeah, a little shout out to our Celtics. They're on to the NBA championship. I don't know if anyone's been watching that. It was a very good game last night. So we've got the president of the Celtics, I believe, lives here in Medfield. So we got to give a shout out to our resident, cheer his team on.
Condolences to the Bill Walton family.
Yeah, well, definitely condolences to the Walton family. I actually met him at an event at the Garden when I was working for Kodak. Really good guy. So on that note, if there's
Citizen input?
say that
Citizen input or?
well, so citizen we can do it. It was
That's fine.
yep.
Is it coming up, or were you?
We asked if there were any citizen comments, and you didn't respond. So.
The train left the
Well,
station.
let's do it. You do it now.
We'll pull it
No,
back
but
in.
I-
We'll pull it back in.
You don't need to do it now.
well, no, we'd already
Now, because we're about to go home, so do it now.
No, Bob. So when we finished action items, the very next thing is citizens comment. And so he said, and that's what I said to Christine. Are there any citizens comments? But I don't mind if you have a question or a comment. I mean,
No, for the citizens thing, yeah.
Yeah.
So for the open comment part.
so
We
Please.
try to work till at least 9 or 10, so that people in the
no,
public
so
see how hard we're
technically,
working.
we asked for that, and you didn't say anything. So we moved to the next part of our agenda.
Oh, I didn't hear.
That's
But he
okay. So
wasn't-
no
he's
problem.
not
So
on the list either.
but if you have a comment, I'm not opposed to hearing a comment. Is
You
that
can
okay?
hear. You can't respond.
You can't
to it,
respond to,
but we can
legally, you
take
can
it
ask
under-
us anything, and then if we want to respond, we have to put it on a future agenda.
I'm Allison Green Street. I'm here about what I think might be one of the most time-critical issues facing the town, and also one that has to do with a lot of money that has to do with the school. And it has to do with the meetings that were going on. I attended one of the meetings. I don't speak for the committee or anyone else, just my impression of what was happening. They're looking at two locations, the Elm Street and Dale Street, and they're looking at two situations for Dale Street. A remodel, rebuild, or a new school. But what they're not looking at, well, first, let me say that at the meeting that I was at, it seemed that people were very interested in knowing what the cost projections might be, and those weren't available. They weren't available the last time we went to the polls, only the cost for the Elm Street location, not for any of the alternatives. So people seemed to be, at the meeting I was at, very interested in what all the cost projections might be, so we could make choices. And what they're not looking at, because they didn't feel they had authority, or they don't have authority, is they're not looking at a case that involves a Dale Street or a school and a park and rec combination. If we go into MSBA, we won't be allowed to do that. But if we go on our own, that might be an alternative. And they're not looking at that at all because they didn't feel they had an authorization. So I'm here to ask you to think about that and possibly give them and the permanent building committee and the park and rec authorization to look at that possibility. And that's why I came tonight.
So
Okay? I know you can't respond, but
I think I can ask a question or to note.
No, not on the agenda. We'll put it on a.
Okay, all right,
Following
fair
agenda.
enough. All right.
okay? That's,
Alright.
I wanted to
You'll have to
bring
come
that to your
back.
attention and ask you to look into that in an official setting like tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We need more things to do because it's summer.
No, but this is the time to ask, right? We just happen to make a comment. So. All right, so then on that note, motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
All right, those in favor? All right.